republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Before we get into the meeting, I'd just like to take a moment and have a moment of silence for a member of the Burlington School Department who passed away suddenly a number of weeks ago. I can't believe it's been that long. For Barbie O'Connell. We can just have the moment, please. Thank you. She has been with the district for, Dr. Conti, you probably know, more years than it probably seems like. She was a dedicated teacher. She supported teachers. She supported students. She supported families. She was a beloved community member. She just touched so many people in so many different ways, and there's such a hole that has been left in the Fox Hill community, in the Burlington district, and our thoughts go out to her family and all those that were touched with her. Words really can't convey or take away the pain that people are feeling, and hopefully over the next few months, this difficult time of the year when we're sharing friends and family and colleagues, that some of the warm memories, just hearing the stories of people who interacted with her and got to be around her so often, hopefully will help keep the smiles on the faces and the warmth in the heart. So I just want to send our thoughts out to the family at such a time. At this point, we'll start with the approval of the October 9th minutes and the October 23rd, 2018 minutes. Is there a motion?
Madam Chairman, I move that we approve the minutes of October 9th, 2018.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain? It passes 5-0-0. And
Madam Chair, I move that we approve the minutes of October 23rd, 2018.
Second.
been moved and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? And it passes 5-0-0. Next on the agenda is the approval of the warrant. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Abstain? I'm sorry, opposed? Abstained?
Aye.
Aye.
It passes 3-0-2. Next on the agenda, we have public participation. If there's anyone in the audience that would like to speak to an item that is not listed as an agenda item, please feel free. Okay. All right, moving right along, we have the information reports. We have our student representative. Welcome, thank you.
Hi everyone. So today we have two SCAB representatives from the junior class and the sophomore class.
Oh, welcome.
So I would like to bring them up to the podium to just say a few words and introduce them.
Hello.
Hi, I'm Sarah Sheikh. I'm the sophomore student council of SCAB. Oh, I'm Bridget Consistent. I'm the junior student council SCAB. We were told to give just like a brief student report for our student council, and right now we have planned about a snowball, which is a winter dance that we combine with the junior class, and we it's for December 7th. At 7 o'clock, and we just figured out all the plannings with chaperones, the food. So we did those planning, and then we're also planning to do a semi-formal dance, and it has been approved by the administration to be held in March. So after we're done with the winter dance, we'll start planning for a semi.
Thanks. Excellent.
And for the junior class, we've been selling scrunchies made by Allison Pinkham.
during lunches, and they look like this. And we also are working on the dance with the sophomores, and that's it for now.
That's excellent. That's nice.
You guys can go.
Okay.
Thank you. Do you have anything to
Great
add
job.
to us?
Get that out of the way.
There's
I think they covered it, but we also had a whole student body meeting yesterday, which we also had our turkey dinner, so there was a lot of food for everyone.
lovely, and we're gearing up for pep rally tomorrow. We still, yep.
Tomorrow morning.
Nice.
Yep,
Nice.
tomorrow morning.
Nice, excellent. Well, thank you. We appreciate you coming out tonight. Thank you.
It's going to be a cold football game.
Yes, it is.
Yes.
I heard 18 degrees.
So dress warmly.
Hand warmers.
What?
So I think we may love it if it turns out to be 18. I
Yeah.
think it's supposed to be like 10.
All right, well, thank you again. Next, if we have
And
any.
Happy Thanksgiving break.
Yeah.
Have a happy Thanksgiving.
You too.
Can I just say
Yes,
something?
most
I'd
definitely.
like to thank the two young ladies that came up and spoke to us. Bridget, I know your family pretty well, and I remember before you were born, so it's kind of a kick to see you here. And thank you for your input tonight and for taking on the position, because sometimes people don't want to do that job. But,
It's a lot of work.
yeah, it is. Thanks for doing it. And we didn't get to chat much tonight, but thank you. You always do a nice job.
Enjoy.
Have a good Thanksgiving.
Thank you. Next on the agenda, we have a subcommittee reports. Subcommittee reports? Okay.
I have a couple of reports since we last met. The Wellness Committee has met, and it was my first time on the Wellness Committee, and I was very impressed with the work they've been doing, and there's a lot going on, and it was good to see sort of where a lot of that information that we get here and the work that's being done, sort of see more of the people who are making that happen. They did report that we've talked a lot about expert screening, which is a new mandate from the state that we screen students for potential drug and alcohol abuse in the middle school and in the high school each 1 year. And we were able to complete the high school screening of the 10th graders, and there were not a lot of opt-outs, which was good, and they found that all of the students who were screened in, which were, I think it was 6 or less, not a lot of students, had already been on the radar of our staff, of our administrators, of our counselors. So I feel like any number of kid who's on that radar is not good, but we're trying to make sure we reach them before there get to be a big problem. We talked about Parent University, which will be later on the agenda. We are going to do the YRBS again this March because we're getting onto a 2-year cycle with the other group of schools. And there will be a report on, we are going to get a report on the 2000, which one is it? I've got it mixed up.
19.
The 19, and we will get a report on that afterward. They also, I was reminded that in the springtime, before we changed our high school start times, they did do a brief survey with students about their sleep, and we talked about doing one again, when to do it, in the winter and the spring, and what kind of areas to keep with it, and possibly to also get a survey of parent opinions of what's going on. So that was good. And there's also going to be a new subcommittee formed to work on wellness policies. So there's a lot going on with a committee that only meets 4 times a year, but there's a lot of people doing a lot during the year. So that was good. And if no one else has a subcommittee to report on, I'll move on. I've been the liaison from the school committee to the Town of Burlington Master Plan Steering Committee. The steering committee has pretty much finished its work. We spent, I think, 3 years talking about all kinds of issues in the district. The draft plan is now at the stage of going to the planning board, who has the operational decision-making about that master plan. They are now having public hearings. So on November 15th, Thursday night, there was a public hearing that I attended, just to sort of follow up. The section of the town master plan is what I'll talk about now. The section that affects the schools is called Services and Facilities. The draft that the consultants had put together included very out-of-date information, some, things that weren't like what we needed to be talked about now in the master plan, which is a thing that goes forward into the future. I was a little concerned because they're still kind of looking at this draft, this original draft, but there have been months and months of comments and changes and things. And last summer, Dr. Conti and Mr. Cuna and I spent a bunch of time updating the text and the information. So they now have the updated information that, our schools, were built in the mid-20th century. I mean, that's a long time ago. And which schools are bursting at the seams, and the need for, renovations at the high school. And that's sort of the building side. And then also in terms of educationally, we have different needs than we had last time they wrote a master plan. There's students with all kinds of different needs that we're trying to meet all of their needs. We're trying to make sure that we're helping our students move into the 21st century and planning for their futures. And my sense was that Kristen Kastner from the planning department had put together a slideshow, and the information she had on the schools was the information that I felt was important. So I was very glad to hear that. And one of those things was, for example, the renovation that we need at the high school. And so I spent some time explaining to them why we need it, and why it's so hard. This is our 7th year that we've applied for it, a funding from the state agency, the Mass School Building Association Authority, and that we don't quite fit into those kinds of their categories. They're very likely to fund schools that are bursting at the seams. A couple of our elementary schools are, but our high school isn't. This school was built for 2,000 students, and we don't have that now. We have about 1,000, 1,100, something like that. So the state doesn't always look at it as a need. Now, clearly, we're using all the space in this building, but the building was built in '71. The air quality, because of the lack of fresh air being brought in, is not up to par. We don't have sprinklers because we're grandfathered in. There are safety issues, as well as the heating system, which, if it were to break, we need to renovate the whole building to get it fixed. We can't just replace the boiler. We have science labs from 1971, and I don't even want to do the math. And the planning board was very supportive of the way we've maintained the building. The fact that we're not looking to tear this down and build a new one, that we're looking to renovate it because the structure is good, but we need a lot of things going on. And they do feel, they were very supportive. They also, when I talked about the elementary schools, about Pine Glen and Fox Hill, they saw the need. They've said it isn't a question of not being able to take care of the buildings, because we have done what we could as we went along. But they were very supportive of our efforts to keep those buildings going, but the need to. And the other thing, we talked a lot about that, and it will be in the master plan in some format or another. The other issue that related to schools was that in another section under transportation, there's a state program called Safe Routes to School, which is a free program that the state does, but they don't do the work. I mean, so during the process of the master plan, one of the things that came up is they did a safety audit looking at safe routes to school around Fox Hill. And they found, there are sidewalks and there's a lot of ways that it's a safe route to school, but that last corner is a problem. And how are the sidewalks configured, and are there crosswalks, and what could be done? Are there need to be a configuration? And the need for the town side and the school side to be working together, because for issues like that, it becomes, well, whose responsibility is it to change that sidewalk or whatever? So those were important issues, I thought, that came up. And looking forward, and we have a new town administrator coming in. I know the planning department is looking for those kinds of communications between departments. And so I'm hoping that that will move forward as well.
Yeah, Madam Chair and Ms. Simon, thank you very much. And I just have Ms. Dresser in the audience here, and I think she would also say the Wynn Street drop-off and bus drop-off would also be one of those same areas where we need to, because Deb, you've mentioned that before. So.
Yeah, through the chair, I mean, if I don't know the details of the safe routes to schools, if it's something that we could just reach out to them as an individual school or as a school department, or if the town has to become part of the program so that we can, I'm not sure, but I know that, and this I'll talk about later, at the conference I went to a couple of weeks ago, there was someone there saying, we have all this stuff for you to use, how can we use it? Now, a lot of what she was talking about is, helping kids learn safe walking on the sidewalks, or how do you ride your bike safely, and things like that, and how do you create things that aren't buildings, but structural or facilities. But definitely, I would look into that, and I'm sure it's just on the state website, Safe Routes to Schools. Okay.
Yes. Just a quick follow-up while we're talking about the memorial school. I recall a couple of months ago, we got an opinion regarding the crossing guards and the fact that they're not supposed to be directing traffic. And I think that as a committee, we might want to think about, as we build next year's budget, how we can get people who can direct traffic as well as let kids cross, work in front of that school. I'm hearing that it's even worse now to get down Wynn Street and merge onto, to get down Center Street, merge onto Wynn Street, because the crossing guards can't go out there and stop traffic anymore unless there's a child actually trying to cross, which is ludicrous in my opinion. It just creates a very, very dangerous situation. I don't know if we can talk to the chief, if he can build it into his budget, but we should have people down there that can direct traffic. I see them in other communities. I mean, I'm on the road a lot, and they look like crossing guards to me, and they're directing traffic. So I don't know why this came up or how it came up. It might have been something that was brought up by the union. But I think we ought to think about it and have conversations about it as we go forward. It's not a safe situation down there. And when parents are dropping their kids off at the school and they're trying to get back out of that narrow driveway, they want to take a left-hand turn onto Wynn Street, crossing guards aren't supposed to go out there and stop traffic anymore.
Yeah,
so it's really dangerous, and I think we need to think about it.
Mr. Kuhn and I can certainly follow up with Chief Kent, and maybe there's a different classification of policeman that's not a crossing guard that meets the requirements. So we can look into that a little bit.
Thank you.
But
Mrs. Monco?
This is sort of a tangent to the safety aspect that you were discussing. I know both Eric and Bobby are aware. What I don't know is if anything has been done to fix the problem at Fox Hill, the after-school program, because when you drive behind the building, there are kids darting back and forth, and somebody's going to get hit. And so it is my opinion that the parents should go in the front of the building and not the back of the building to pick the kids up. And I wonder, has anything changed?
So thank you. Physically, nothing has changed. We have had conversations, myself and Erica, the principal of the building, David Rosenblatt, and Donna Sullivan with the before and after school. So we've looked at a solution to change the hardware on the front door But then we would also have to look at a way to redirect it. So even temporarily putting cones up just to really direct people to not go around the building and really get the message out across that. I think just to be clear though, right, so I don't know that kids are obviously running across the building all day long. There are times where it's either, drop off in the morning and it should be a single lane.
They play in the playground.
Right, right.
So if somebody sees a parent coming to pick them up, they run.
Yep.
And it's a safety issue.
No, it is. I just like to take the moment just to make sure that the message gets out that while we're looking at changing it, it is a single lane. So maybe if parents were to kind of wait instead of driving around cars and so forth, that's not the solution, but I think that we obviously need to be conscious of where the kids are. And then...
But we were looking to change the behavior, though. We were going to reroute. Ms. Monaco, part of the issue was the access to the front of the building was a safety issue as well, because the before and after school program, they didn't have someone watching the door, and then parents were giving out the key code. So I think we were looking at changing the lock so it's a little bit different, so we would have limited access into the building, but then kids could dismiss from the front and parents could pick up at the front. I think we need to then change some behaviors, which means we would need to block the driveway around the back. So we have a bunch of solutions. It's not as simple as you would imagine, but we want to make sure that, because the before and after school programming is largely in the gymnasium or out back, we don't have someone who's sort of watching the door, because the secretaries leave before the before and after school program ends. So it's about having someone sort of see who's coming into the front of the building in terms of getting the dismissal to work. So we are working on it. We're aware of the issue. Ideally, we would like to have kids exit through the front of the building and then provide a sort of a secure access to the front of the building, and then block off the one-lane road that goes around the back.
I started hearing about this being an issue last spring, so I'm going to ask for an update at the next meeting. Sharon, could we have it on the agenda?
Yes, ma'am.
Got out my box of matches, lit a little fire. I'm really concerned that somebody could get hurt. Thank you.
All right. Any other subcommittee reports? Seeing none, next on the agenda is Ways and Means. We'll be speaking during financial section 2, though. Feel free. All right, we have instruction technology, the Memorial School.
We have the whole Memorial School here.
Fifth
It looks
grade
like, so
team.
that's all right.
Thank you very much for joining us tonight.
So I'm just going to take a seat for a few minutes just to introduce some of my terrific staff at Memorial School. I'd like to thank Dr. Conti and the school committee for giving us the opportunity to talk about some celebrations at Memorial School. I'm fortunate to have picked any grade level to kind of talk about the terrific successes that are going on at this school. But I did choose the 5th grade team in addition to my math specialist and my literacy specialist and my special educator, because they took on a task that was daunting about a year and a half ago. Some of this thinking on my part came from the Planning for Success document that focused on inclusionary practices in the Burlington Public Schools. And I felt like, given your rich resources that I have in my building, how can I best maximize student learning using all the resources in what can easily become a very complicated system. So we may flood you with some details, but the important takeaway is that these people really shifted their thinking around how to best help student learning. And what they came up with is a system that I think benefits all students. So thank you.
I'm Mary Catherine Concise, and I teach 5th grade at Memorial. And when Deb first came to us with this, we collaboratively came up with quite a few goals for this new system of teaching. And we were so our goals for inclusion and co-teaching were, in this important transitional year of 5th grade, we're doing this dance of making sure we're meeting the students where they are developmentally, but still helping them transition to middle school next year. So we wanted to continue to support them academically, socially, and emotionally, and make sure we were promoting and increasing confidence, responsibility, and growth mindset. The co-teaching model has been wonderful because it's really allowed us to collaborate with people who have expertise in certain areas. So as a classroom teacher, it was really helpful to co-teach with Nicole Mondello, who's a reading teacher, and then this year with Deanna Goggin, who's a special ed teacher. And to make sure that we're including all learners in the regular education classroom. So that co-teaching model really helps us do that, and also just help them prepare for the transition to middle school, because they do also use an inclusion model there and the similar block schedules to our system this year.
Good evening. I'm Marie Murray. I'm the math specialist for Memorial School. So hopefully this graphic that we created will help explain it, because there's a lot of working pieces to the model, how the dyad works. So the main idea behind the dyad is that pairs of teachers focus on a particular subject area. So you can see the orange boxes at the top, Val Burns and Paul Rabazi. They focus on science, social studies, and math. And the red boxes on the bottom, Amy and MK, focus on the writing and the ELA. So the way it works in 5th grade is first thing in the morning they have specials. They come back at 9:15, and then they stay with their homeroom teacher for science. So if a student in Paul's class would stay in with Paul, and he would teach them science and social studies. Val is doing the same thing with her homeroom. Meanwhile, MK is teaching writing to her homeroom, and Amy is teaching writing to her homeroom. And then the columns, you can see on the right, the two classes, Paul's class and MK's class. For the second block in the morning, they swap their homerooms. So MK is teaching Paul's class writing, and Paul's teaching MK's class science and social studies. And the same thing happens on the left with Val and Amy. In this model, so it's Val and Paul work closely together to collaborate on the science and social studies, and Amy and MK work together to collaborate on the writing. One of the nice things about this in the morning time is that the teachers have a minimum of 45 minutes with their homeroom, so it helps them build relationships with their students. And the students also have an hour and a half with their homeroom peers, so they can build relationships with their peers. So that's what makes the morning nice. And then they have wind time, which Val's going to talk about in a minute, and then lunch recess, and they come back in for 2 more blocks in the afternoon, which is the math and the ELA. So that works a little differently. So for the afternoon blocks, there's students are flexibly grouped based on data, and Nicole's going to talk more about that in a minute. So as you can see, there's still 4 classes going on at the same time. Paul and Val are teaching math. Amy and MK are teaching ELA. And I'm the math specialist, so I work with Val and Paul. For the first block, I co-teach with Paul, and Deanna co-teaches with him for the second block. And then, meanwhile, in ELA, Deanna co-teaches with MK, the first block, and Nicole co-teaches with Amy, the second block. So, and again, Nicole is working with Amy and MK, collaborating, planning. Deanna and Paul and I meet, we collaborate, and we do all aspects of the co-teaching, as does everyone else that co-teaches, who do the planning, instruction, the assessments, the whole piece. What did I miss? So as you can see with this model, all 7 professionals are, the students really benefit from the expertise and the experience from all 7 educators. So that's pretty much the dyad model.
Remember when I said it got complicated? They actually do know where they're going.
The important thing is the fifth
I don't know where to
graders-
find anybody.
The fifth graders feel like they're cool. Because they're like, what block are you going to? I'm going to reading. Where are you going? I'm going to math. This goes all the way to October. Like, everyone knows where they're going. We still like to talk about what block we have.
Okay, my name is Nicole Mondello, and I'm a reading teacher at Memorial. I'm lucky to be part of this team. I'm going to talk about the instructional groupings and how we determine which students are assigned to specific ELA and math classes. ELA and math classes are flexibly grouped and organized to best meet and support student needs. Our approach broadens the teachable range. And what I mean by that is we've created a mixed high and mixed low set of students based on the data that we have collected. So we've taken the model that is already in the elementary school, the tiered model, where based on student performance and data, they're flexibly placed in classrooms with either additional support if needed. So team meets together, and that by team I mean special educators, guidance counselors, administrators, and fourth grade teachers, because at the end of the fourth grade, they have a lot of information about students. So the team meets together and we look at all the district data, iReady data, doubles data, math data, and we determine where the students would be placed. We consider strongly teacher observations and student portfolios at this time, academic support plans, which is why the special ed staff is there, in addition to guidance counselors to help us really design the classrooms to maximize student growth and learning, because we all know that the dynamics do impact how much support a classroom might need from RTI tutors and whatnot. Our goals are to support students' academic and emotional needs, and the instructional grouping gives us enough flexibility to really address the needs of the middle ground of students and to help take away some of that stigma of being with the same group of students from first grade throughout their experience at the middle school, at the elementary level, which lends itself really well to our new WIN model, which stands for What I Need. So again, Val's going to talk about that soon, but that idea is based on digging even deeper into the data. We have designed this part of the day that addresses individual students' needs even further.
Hi guys, I'm Amy Warford. I'm a 5th grade teacher at Memorial, and I am teaching ELA and writing this year. So we sat down this week and kind of reflected on last year and what's happened so far this year, and just kind of came up with professional challenges that we've found in going forth with this new model, and professional rewards. So we'll start with the challenges, and I think they're basic challenges that all teachers face most of the time anyways. A first one really being time and time for planning. There's a lot more moving parts when we're working this way. As a reading teacher, I need time to work with MK so we can plan the 5th grade curriculum, and then I need time with Nicole so we can plan our reading class. I have an ELL teacher that works within my classroom, so I plan with her for ELL students. And then 5th grade still needs time to meet. So there's kind of these moving parts that we're being flexible with, thinking about how to use our time most effectively. Establishing relationships with co-teachers, communication with co-teachers, being able to be honest with each other about what's working, what's not, what needs to change, suggestions, being open to new ideas. Finding models that work for you and the team. I know, MK and I approach this slightly differently than the math teachers decided to, so we even within our group, we've got kind of different approaches that we're finding work for all of us. And kind of, being forced to compromise a little bit. There might be things that you're used to doing or things that you enjoy doing that in this model, you have to be flexible with what stays, what goes, whose ideas. But it's been a really valuable opportunity to teachers tend to be rulers of their own little world, so to have two or three people coming in, forces you to be a little bit more open-minded and flexible with the way things are going. As far as rewards go, we found a lot. We're finding that we are being much more effective and detailed in our planning. Students are also getting really streamlined instruction. As an ELA teacher, I know that kids, whether they're with me or MK, are getting very similar experiences because we're putting all that effort into the planning. different lenses improve instruction and learning. You know, as a reading teacher, I get to hear thoughts from the special educator, the reading specialist, and that kind of broadens my thinking about the way I'm doing things. And also different co-teaching models that helps meet student needs, but also keep them really engaged. We've really seen kids enjoying this, being engaged in what's happening. So a lot of rewards that we've seen throughout this.
My name is Valerie Burns. I teach 5th grade at Memorial. So our much awaited wind time. So we started wind time, What I Need, a couple years ago when we sort of started to recognize that some kids had services they went to during this extension period. Some kids were identified by data for RTI tutors, but there was a huge pool of kids who were left over who really weren't utilizing that time. On top of that, because they're 5th grade and they're developmentally there at 10 and 11, there started to be sort of a stigma to who walked down the hallway to go to the learning center with the RTI tutors and who didn't. So we were like, geez, what can we do to further engage those other kids who aren't involved in one of those other services going on? So we started talking about, you know, it'd be really great if I had extra reading comprehension time, or it'd be really great if we could identify some kids who need help with academic vocabulary, or it'd be really great to have a little extra math support center, or to do a project-based learning program that we don't have time for in our normal schedule. Or right now, like Amy Warford's doing typing, Cordytown. Like, what are extra things that we could be doing? So we came up with this model where everybody goes somewhere. So it's no longer certain kids are in the hallway, everybody goes somewhere, and everybody has a WIN class. So that has like helped tremendously with the specialists and to be able to have like a positive attitude for the kids coming in there. The kids see it as fun. We take a look at the data and figure out like who we think needs what. So we kind of come up with these classes based on what we think the need is. Like, they're not really doing great with this. Maybe we should do, you know, this or that. Right now, I just finished a global read aloud I did with my WIN class, which was great. These are some of the students. So we interviewed them last year about what they thought, and they were very funny. One of them said, well, it wasn't a big deal. It wasn't a big change for me when I moved from a different intervention class to this one, because I'm still doing a lot of work. Another person said, the positives are that everyone gets a fair amount of learning. That's a big deal with 5th graders. Fair amount of learning. People that go to intervention get to learn, and people in these other classes are learning too. We try to have the classes run 6 to 8 week cycle. So we're running parallel with the RTI tutors and the IEP services. We meet, we have a huge meeting when we try to determine WIN kids. We have everybody, pretty much everybody here at the meeting and figure out who's going somewhere. And then after we figure out who's spoken for, then we look at who's left over, and then we'll have a conversation about what we think would help those kids. So the kids know that they switch every 6 to 8 weeks. Data really drives what we're teaching, and it's been a very positive thing. One of the kids said to me, it's sort of like activity block in middle school, and I was like, no, but okay. So they love feeling that they're older than they are, and I'm like, it's not really like activity block, but the other really important piece that we thought to this was that the kids don't get to choose. So if the kids who did not get to choose it, they're going to speech, OT, PT, or whatever, that the other kids wouldn't get to choose their classes. So we choose the classes. We put them where we think makes the most sense for us. So that way it's been really positive.
Hi, I'm Deanna Goggin, special ed teacher that works with 5th grade. So from this model, from the co-teaching model and the inclusion model and along with WIN, we've seen a lot of growth in our students. Some of the benefits have been test scores and attitude towards learning. So we analyzed some of the MCAS scores from the same cohort of students. So the 4th graders at the end of 2017, and then that grade moving up to 5th grade, what their scores looked like in 2018. And we saw tremendous growth In ELA, we saw it went from 40% of students meeting or exceeding expectations to 60%. So we saw a 20% growth in their MCAS scores. And then also in math, we saw a jump from 36% of meeting or exceeding expectations to 57. So that was a 21% growth in MCAS scores. Some of the other, we saw a lot of other growth in their classroom data as well as the MCAS scores. I think the most important piece of evidence that we saw for growth was that the students reported feeling more confident in their classroom. Teachers reported an increase in student participation and an increase in engagement due to meeting more students' needs in the classroom.
Excellent. Comments from the committee?
Elizabeth, you're sitting in the back. Would you introduce yourself? So.
Hi, my name's Elizabeth McKay, and I'm the Special Education Team Chair at Memorial. So what's nice about this is there's so many people involved, different groups. We have RTI involved, special education, general education. And that's sort of, I mean, that's why I see it as being so effective, is that all of these different areas of expertise are coming together to really meet the needs of students. And so I am so impressed with this group of educators here. It's a privilege to work among them. So thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Monco?
Do you do this at every grade level, or is it just the 5th grade?
5th grade is in its 2nd year pilot, so it is just 5th grade at Memorial School.
And so in the 4th grade, what happens to the kids during this wind block?
That's a great question. So I do challenge calling it what I need time, because it's really what we think you need. But having said that,
I get it.
Having said that, 5th grade really, as you can see, knows how to dig in and unravel quite a complicated system.
Yes.
So they did it so easily. I very eagerly offered it to 3rd and 4th grade this year. And both the 3rd and 4th grade teams are using the 5th grade model for win time. So the same outcomes we're hoping for students in 3rd and 4th and 5th grade to be that win time becomes everyone does something. It's giving teachers, I think one of the things that the teachers didn't recognize, but I do immediately, is that teachers took this on as they want to do a lot. And they have a lot to already do. So the win time gave teachers an opportunity to get, to kind of grow in their practices as well. So they took on new adventures. They took on things that they knew they were missing. Teachers are always looking to do more and better. And so they really kind of embraced it as an opportunity to do that. And I think the byproduct is the kids really just got energized by it.
I'm trying to find a way to say what's kind of swirling in my head, and it's a combination of things. What you're doing is fascinating. It's effective, I'm sure. It is something that we wouldn't know about unless you came and told us. Are the parents of the children all aware of the complexity of this schedule? And
they are. This is a similar presentation that parents get, not as detailed, but pretty detailed during open house. So parents are familiar. They know where their child goes because the child explains it to them. And so there is obviously, going into 4th grade, there's an excitement to go into 5th grade to do something different. And so parents are aware of it.
Well, from my perspective, I think it's you to be congratulated on solving the puzzle, so to speak. I mean, there might be different solutions to the puzzle, but this is clearly a great solution, and the effectiveness of it, I'm sure you see on a daily basis. So it's really nice to see that so much is going on, and the complexity of the scheduling and the co-teaching and bringing all the staff together to work on it. So congratulations, I'm impressed.
Thank you.
That takes a lot.
Well, sometimes. You did it, though.
Yeah. Terrific.
Mr. Murphy?
Thank you. I want to thank you all for coming tonight. I thought it was a great presentation. Like Chris, I'm impressed by the thinking outside of the box end of it. And obviously the staff has bought into it, and to me, and kudos to the principal on this one. Whenever you do something different, you have to get people to buy into it, to think it's going to work, and to enthusiastically give it a good shot. And by doing it the way you've done it, you essentially allowed the staff to kind of create their own procedures and their way of going about it, and they each use their individual thoughts and philosophies to shape that, but stepping back, let them do it, and obviously it's been successful. So
thank you.
That's a very nice job. But to the rest of you, I thought it was a great presentation, and thank you all for coming out tonight.
And Mr. Murphy, I think the sort of the untold story here is there are non-negotiables that exist in the elementary schedule as well. So when Deb and I were talking about this, there was always some push and pull, but there's some non-negotiables. And I think what was really creative is the teachers maintained the non-negotiables. They're certainly stretching them, but at least they're telling me they're maintaining the non-negotiables.
We are. I promise,
but
Dr.
but they've restructured them in a way that works well for them. So I think that was this wasn't a completely here's a blank day, do whatever you want. This was there are some non-negotiables that you have to cover, and they really creatively worked with those non-negotiables in a way that I think makes sense, because we want to make sure there's equity across sort of the 5th grade programming. And so the 30 minutes, for instance, exists in all 4 elementary schools. It just may look a little bit different here, and that's when we'll learn. All the other 3 will learn from this, and they'll learn from them. But so that again, that's one of the non-negotiables is sort of this 30 minutes of time built into the day. So that's it's almost harder to do that than start from scratch. So it just.
Mr. Nelson?
It is a little confusing when you look at the scheduling. I'm just wondering to the teachers and the specialists out there, does this approach make your lesson planning more complicated, or does it make it easier, where you're all focusing in on 1 or 2 things?
I can speak to math. It's easier for me because I have 2 of the same section. So I'm basically lesson planning once and then tweaking it a little bit.
That's what it seemed to be. I wasn't sure if that was happening in practice, but it seemed like if you're all sharing with maybe you're able to streamline it a little bit and make your life a little easier.
And myself plan together for science and social studies, so it's really just planning together and then implementing it. So.
Thank you. It was a great presentation. Thank you.
Yeah, because ELA is its own.
Yeah,
as anybody knows.
I think it's, as a reading teacher, I feel like it has definitely allowed me to dive deeper into things like various materials and think about reading in a different way than I would have just for time's sake, really, because I'm not preparing a science lesson and then a math lesson. I'm able to really focus my attention on literacy and use the other resources that I have in terms of colleagues, and so it has definitely been helpful. Although, reading is such a huge subject, so it has, now that I am in it, you can sort of go,
still don't have time.
No. Yeah, it's been great.
I wouldn't say it's less planning or less time, it's just a different type of planning, a deeper type of planning, and there's more people and parts that you're considering.
But again, I think, Mr. Nelson, the comparison here to me is 10 years ago, again, we've always had exceptional instruction and exceptional teachers. If we had 96 elementary teachers, which is roughly what we have, we would have 90 6 sort of incredibly talented independent contractors. So the model here that's different is basically saying if you have 80 fifth graders, the entire team is responsible for the progress of all 80 kids. So it's a much different model than a one-room classroom where the experience is different, and then the teacher's responsible for planning everything that occurs in that day. So I still think if you looked in each individual classroom, you would see small group instruction happening during ELA. So again, there's sort of best practices occurring, and I would say while your teachable range is a little bit broader than maybe some other grades, I think your curricular range is narrower, right? So that's sort of the trade-off. So again, I think they're keeping the non-negotiables, but sort of pulling it in directions that work for them. But I would say, sort of, if you're a fifth grade parent, it's more of a fifth grade program as opposed to a fifth grade classroom, and so that's the sort of the huge change.
Thank you.
Ms. Simon?
I really appreciate that all of you came, because it's taken a lot of time out of your evening. But I am very impressed with this kind of a model, and as a former special ed teacher, and trying to work over the years with what's the latest term, gen ed, regular ed, I don't know, with classroom teachers to help students, in the environment without pulling them out, to add expertise on both sides and those kinds of things. So I'm really delighted to see this, and as other people have mentioned, it is the way we can meet kids' needs the best. And I'm also really glad that you see it as a pilot program, and that you've certainly bought in, and that maybe now your third and fourth grade teachers are. I'm hoping that maybe we can push it out to the rest of the district if the pilots go well, continue to go well at Memorial. So I'm very excited to see the model. I've got a couple of questions. You talked about using different co-teaching models, and you don't need to go into the details, but I know there are different ways that co-teaching can be done. So did you kind of do some research and explore different ways and then figure out for each group which way was going to work the best for you? Is there someone who could maybe comment on that?
We did have a training with Lisa Diker, and she was fabulous, and she kind of introduced us to all those co-teaching methods.
Yeah.
And then I think that there are a number of them, but it's whatever works for who's teaching, and it changes day to day. Sometimes it's parallel teaching, sometimes it's station teaching. So it varies based on the personalities that are teaching, the students in front of us, it's the lesson. But we did that training that we all did initially was very helpful in teaching us the different ways to do it.
That's really good, and also because then, like you said, you're individualizing, but you didn't just pick one and then you do that all the time, but you're individualizing based on the teacher's comfort level, the student's needs, and all that. So that's good. Were you going to say something?
No, I'm just saying, if I didn't know the individuals, sometimes I'll walk into the class and you won't know who the teacher of record is. So that's what I would say.
I'm also wondering if you're calling, I love that everybody goes somewhere and kids aren't getting stigmatized, but is it still that some kids go to intervention and some kids go to WIN? Because, I mean, they're all going to WIN. They're all going to What I Need. So there could be maybe some blurring of that in the future. I don't know.
So the master schedule does dictate that the interventions occur during that 30-minute obligated time for each grade level. So there are students that do receive intervention and then come out of intervention and then cycle into a WIN cycle. So those groupings continually change.
But I'm talking about not calling it intervention. It's still intervention in the RTI model, but you could still call it its WIN block.
Yes.
Everybody, okay, yeah, okay. So it's being labeled the same whether you're going to the RTI tutor or whether you're going to one of the typing classes. Great. That's even better than what I thought was happening already. Great.
And that's why they changed on the 6-week cycle. They run the same time frame that our data meetings run.
So,
good. Although
RTI determines who needs to receive formal intervention,
Mhm.
the intervention that we progress monitor and we track their progress to ensure that they're making growth.
Right.
This happens simultaneously, so just as we're about to shuffle and review their data and determine whether or not they're dismissed from intervention, that's when all of the team changes classes.
Yeah, and you certainly thought about all the details. It's really great to see this in practice. It's, things that I hear about and I've talked about and I've tried to implement in other places, and you're doing it. So that's pretty exciting. I was wondering also, as a parent whose kids were out of the elementary schools before RTI came in, I've been kind of learning about it in general, and knew about the extension block with the intervention time, and I had heard that some teachers were using it this way and some teachers were using it that way. So I think this is really great. One of the things, I'm also really glad to hear you say that those kids in the middle, because kids who need specific interventions are getting a lot of attention. But I'm also wondering, there's something that I used to call gifted, and I wondering if there are ways, I know project-based learning can address things like that. So is there I don't know a lot about the field of gifted education, but I know we have students who, are able to zoom right ahead beyond where the curriculum maybe is taking them. Maybe you could talk for a minute, somebody, about how do you address the needs of those kids who need more challenge, are ready for more challenge or more extension in those kinds of ways. Okay.
Some of the WIN classes have been like gifted and talented related.
Mm-hmm.
We've done like stop pocket game.
Yeah.
We've done some like math Olympiad type
Mm-hmm.
brain teaser type things for math. So it all depends on the clientele we have.
Okay.
So we have done gifted and talented WIN classes. We thought that was a good use of it.
Mm-hmm.
So some kids definitely can benefit from that. But we don't schedule one every single time because it depends on, someone could be like gifted and talented in math, but we really feel like maybe they need help with writing or that kind of thing. So if we do get a pool of kids that we feel like, you know what, we could do an extension class with this group, we will. So it all kind of depends on who we have in front of us, but we have done it in the past.
Great. I think my last question, I may think of one more, but you talked about having mixed high and mixed low groupings. And I like the sound of that because it sounds less sorted out. And clearly RTI is about sorting kids out, although the good thing about that is that it's fluid. Kids may be sorted out for this topic and not for that topic, for this time period and not this time period. So I don't feel like RTI is complete sorting. But over the years that I've been in education, it keeps coming up that heterogeneous groupings are really good for kids, both for the higher academically achieving kids and for the lower. And so maybe someone could talk about how maybe it's helping bring mixed groups back or not, because you're trying to address specific needs. So
That's a great question. I think one of the opportunities this model allowed us to explore is looking at, we did widen the instructional range. But what we found were instructionally taking that middle group and thinking about them as, with students that are struggling, providing a model for them in the classroom, and also reciprocating back to helping students. You teach by learning, whether you're a student or a child. And the mixed group kind of being fluid in both areas allowed those students to kind of push in ranges that they may not have in other options.
So are you saying that these low, mixed, and high, what did you call them? Mixed high and mixed low groups are more, there's a broader range, even though they are still the kids here and the kids there, kind of?
All the ranges are fluid. So students that maybe, excel in mathematical understanding may be in one grouping, and students that, are
Mhm.
terrific writers and,
Mhm.
and readers in another area.
Mhm.
So it
Good.
really depends on
Great.
kind of what the data tells us about their learning styles.
Yeah. I think it's fabulous, and if we could have that in all our schools and all our grades, I would love to hear about that. I also think that, from the very beginning of it, what were your premises, and really consciously choosing to teach the growth mindset and to work on those issues so that kids think about learning as something where mistakes are things to learn from, and what can I do differently? If it didn't work that way, what can I do differently? And having that being built in from the foundation of this program, I think is also really important. I know it's going on in the rest of the district in many ways, so I don't want to, but it's very exciting to hear about this program. So thank you all for your commitment.
Well, again, I just want to thank you and echo the hard work that went into this. The planning is immense, to take 80 students under all of your wings and then figure out where the best option is for them every 6 to 8 weeks is a huge process. And I can't thank you enough for taking that on. There are many districts that wouldn't have the ability from the top to say, yes, let's go for this, and let that go, and then really work at the scheduling. It's difficult. You still have gym, you still have music, you still have a whole other school of K through 4 that you need to manage and schedule this around. So just from top to the teachers to the specialists, reading specialists, the special ed, it's a very big undertaking. And these charts up here make it look seamless, and it is not. I just hope people understand it is not. So I commend you greatly for saying, yes, this is something we want to do. We have an idea of how to target our children's abilities and meet them where they are, and bring them up and get them that student growth and that understanding, and then doing it together. As you said, everybody has different viewpoints, different ideas. You're all talented. I've had the ability to be with many of you, and no two of you are the same. You're all unique and wonderful in your teaching and your teaching ability, and to bring that all together, again, is just wonderful, and takes a lot of work and a lot of time to get to know each of you and your time, how you teach, and how best to blend that into teaching those 20 students in front of you who are all unique of themselves. So while the middle school concept, this seems like, it is not, because they run a whole school this way. So again, I can't thank you enough for taking the time and putting the energy into such a wonderful model that I look forward to seeing you back again with an update, maybe in the spring, maybe next fall. I just am very interested in it, and very pleased that you took the time to come and share it with us tonight. And thank you again from the superintendent right down, because it takes a lot to put this through. So thank you. And our children will be thanking you, whether or not they realize it. So thank you.
So again, Madam Chair, I think the thinking that was most challenging in this, they really pushed my thinking a little bit. So it wasn't easy. I think they had to do some convincing. I think it works well in 5th grade. I think there are some environmental things that serve this well, a school
Yes.
design around 4
Yep.
section and a dyad. I think if you look
Right.
at Francis Wyman, which is 5, or Pine Glen, which is
Right.
3, I think the
Mhm.
schedule, they would have other issues, so
Yep.
there's some structural things that make sense. Memorial has a reading specialist, actually 2 reading specialists. We have one, obviously, Nicole, very talented here tonight, but also a math specialist. So
Mhm.
we've talked about maybe having those resources available at all schools. But I do want to point out the ways and means. we're doing a lot of, in sort of my other job now this year, we're doing a lot of district-to-district comparisons. And when we're working with schools who are struggling with state funding, one of the issues that the teachers have is they have to change grades all the time and change configurations all the time. So a teacher will be in 5th grade one year, then 2nd grade, then 3rd grade, and she's having to move around a lot. So I think even if you're not into the structure, I think clearly what you will see is this type of collaboration requires a certain level of staffing and stability that allows people to take some risks and to have the opportunity, because you have to have a relationship. You have to trust the person you're co-teaching with at a minimum. And if you have a revolving door there, just like in your lines of work, it would be really hard to have that collaboration. So I think starting from the foundation, it's that stability that allows this type of collaboration to happen and the talent to happen. And then, again, my belief, and we could argue about some of the details, but my belief is trying to close disparities early is much more cost effective than waiting to let those gaps grow. So if we can get kids reading at grade level by 5th grade, if we can sort of close out elementary in a strong way, that's much more cost effective than sort of letting those things continue to grow. And again, so we're certainly, you're sitting here saying we have a lot of resources. I'm saying we absolutely do, but those resources are needed to get kids prepared for where they need to go. And those, instead of those resources all operating individually or independently, they're just working together. And if we could add time to the day or add time to the year, it really wouldn't be for more direct student teaching time. It would be if we could give you all an extra hour a day just to be adults and to work and co-plan. I think that's the struggle, honestly, with teaching now, is the idea is teachers are only working when they're in front of kids, and clearly they're not. And I'm saying our schedule is still built around that, that 100-year-old, I think, misperception. So I think you're taking sort of some really archaic things about teaching and really trying to work with that. So again, thank you all very much. I hope you appreciate the effort and time, and a lot of this was done on individual time, own time. I know there's probably lots of phone calls and emails happening in the evenings and on weekends, and again, that's much appreciated. And I think the 5th grade experience is significantly different than certainly where we started, 11 years ago, and Deb, even different than when we sort of started 3 or 4 years ago. And I think you have to be willing to fail too, some. And I think you've probably sort of bumped at some things and made some changes, and I think that's really an important way of learning. So again, honestly, thank you all very much. And it's a snowy Wednesday before Thanksgiving, and you're all out here. So really appreciate the commitment, and that is true. So again, thank you all so much. And again, I hope seeing some of the fruits of our struggles, I hope you find sort of the end of the story, which you don't often get to hear, important. But it does tie back to having the stability and the talent to do this type of thing. So thank you.
I can honestly say there are very few districts that would have the ability to pull this together in such a manner. So it is greatly appreciated. So thank you, Ways and Means in town. And thank you again. So have a lovely Thanksgiving and time with your family and friends. Thank you. Okay. Next on the agenda, we have the November 5th Professional Development Overview.
Yeah, I'm just going to run through quickly.
Sure.
So just an update of what people are up to, and we've done evaluations of staff based on the PD that was offered, and received feedback, which will help us, again, plan for future PD. But the kindergarten teachers spent the morning with Ms. Pavlicek from the Science Center, working on some science apps. In the afternoon, they did some ST math training here at Central Office. Our first grade teachers worked with social studies coach Katie Berkery in the morning, and then did ST math training in the afternoon as well. Our second and third grade teachers all did Keys to Literacy training at the Memorial School cafeteria. That was an all-day training. It's the first year for grades 2 and 3 for Keys to Literacy. So this was their second day. They also had a day during BPSCon for training. Grade 4 flip-flopped what we heard from grade 1 earlier. They did their ST math training in the morning and then social studies in the afternoon with Coach Bercury. 5th grade teachers did ST math training in the morning also, and then they had some science time with Mr. Musselman from the Science Center in the afternoon. All of our reading and math specialists, you saw Mrs. Murray and Mrs. Mondello here, and their colleagues from the other schools also took part in the Keys Literacy training at Memorial School. Our ESL teachers were up here at central office. They were working on the model curriculum units that they've developed and going through those with one another, getting feedback prior to working on those with students. And our guidance counselors and school psychologists worked with Susan S. Stone, talking about our DESA, our social emotional learning screening tool that we use in the elementary schools. And our special ed team worked with Mrs. Hood, again, first year, finding out what's working, what's been done, and that received some great feedback in the evaluations just that time that they had together. And the last two groups, the music teachers all work together with Mr. Mullen, who does some coaching for the music teachers across the district. And the art teachers actually all agreed they didn't do anything on November 5th, but they were all here on November 6th. Election day, we had all of our art teachers at the middle school with art teachers from 9 other districts. And they collaborated and did a really neat program where they talked of kind of like a habits of mind in the art classroom. They did a lot of hands-on work. The art teachers played the role of students. And I did get to spend a few hours there in the morning, and it was really a phenomenal program, something we need to do more of, I think, especially for our specialists who are left kind of isolated sometimes, being the Lone Rangers in their schools, or only a few of them in the district. But credit to Mr. Ratkovich, who reached out to other districts and I think coordinated this with one of the other art directors from another district. And it was really fun to be part of, to sit in and see the discussions they were having. And again, they all showed up. There was no side agreement. We had to work with these teachers. They decided for relevant PD, they'll all come here on November 6th. They arranged childcare at home for the people that had kids, and just a testament again to the planning for Mr. Ratkovich and again the teachers themselves for what they put into their jobs. They were willing to to do something nobody else was working in the district that day except them. So it's a credit to their craft and what they do. And if you've been around our schools and seen what they do in art classrooms, there's no accident to why they do such good work there. So that's a quick overview of what they were up to. The PE teachers went to the Mass PE conference, was actually held that day as well on November 5th. So they went to that. While we're here, because it's not on the agenda, I did want to just quickly mention Parent University. Since that happened Saturday as well. We had about 40 parents here, I would say, for the keynote, which was by Dr. Chris Willard, a mindfulness expert who came in and spoke for the first hour and was received very well. And then it was broken apart by a couple of sessions following that, a community showcase in the middle where some of our local community folks came in, and there was a table, a couple math programs that kids could join into. There was somebody here from foster care, to talk about opportunities for foster children. And then following the community showcase, there were a couple more sessions. Since there weren't that many, I'll tell you what they were. The morning sessions were Mr. Villano led a session on Seesaw student portfolios, is a tool that we're using widely across the district for elementary school, and talked to the parents about that. There was a session on referrals and strategies to help students in need, for parents to go down and talk, if they had thoughts on some things they didn't know where to turn for their students who were struggling. Gave a lot of good options in that session. There was a vaping session. Mr. Jackling actually jumped in and led a vaping session. Then the afternoon sessions, Mindful Communication with Children, was led by one of our elementary teachers, Mrs. Farmer, who's probably our most expert in that topic here in the district. And then there was a session on sleep matters that was led by Dr. Candace Mutter, who's always great to help us with these events that we do, and comes in and talks on pretty much any topic we ask her to. And then I did a session on our BPS website and how parents can kind of support their kids with their use of social media in the second session. So again, we had a smaller crowd than we would have liked. I do want to credit the folks that turned out. Were very engaged, asking questions. So hopefully word will spread that these events, I think they're high quality. The presenters all, I heard good things about everybody that presented. And I think it was useful information. And as Matt Jackling, who helped organize this whole thing with, I always forget her name now. It's getting late.
Susan Fay?
No.
Doherty?
From the town side.
Christine Truhan.
Christine, yeah, thank you. Christine Truhan, who helped us out at Fox Hill as well when we had that issue a couple weeks ago. Christine was great. She helped Matt organize this whole thing. And as Matt said to the folks in attendance there, the parent feedback is going to set the agenda for the next one. So if there's things that parents want to hear more about, whether it's a keynote that they want to bring in to have people hear about, or if there's breakout sessions that they feel would be useful for them, again, that's what we're here for, to try to, get together on a Saturday in a comfortable setting and talk about the issues that the folks in town would like to learn more about. So.
Ms. Sun?
If I did go, and I was glad I was able to go, and it was a really valuable parent university. I think that I want to just thank Mr. Jackling, because there was a scheduling snafu, so that's why he jumped in to do the vaping workshop, and he did a great job. And I attended Patrick's workshop on social media, and I learned a lot and figured out how to get signed up for the notices I wanted, although the website's still not working properly. So if somebody has tried to sign up, they're working on it. I did get
It worked well for me, but I don't know what's going on
It didn't
now.
let
Yeah,
me
yeah.
sign up, but our webmaster's working
Yes,
on
she
it,
is.
so we're still working on it. And I had, a couple, I'm hoping that if we can get the date out sooner. I know a lot of people, people are busy on Saturday mornings, but maybe if they knew a month in advance instead of 2 weeks in advance for the date, maybe people would be able to reserve it. I know I knew in advance because of being on the school committee, and so I had reserved it more than a month in advance, but if I hadn't, I had 2 or 3 other things that had come up. So I would encourage us to publicize it a little bit earlier, even if we don't know the exact workshops. And I just wanted to mention 2 things from the mindfulness keynote speaker, Dr. Willard. He started out with this quote, which I thought was an interesting one for parents, for teachers, for all of us. Never in the history of calming down has anyone ever calmed down by being told to calm down. So I thought that was worth passing on. And he also has, he's written books about it, and I've heard they're good. He gave us a couple examples from his new children's book that's coming out next year called Alpha Breaths, about A for alligator breaths, and B for butterfly breaths. So he had a lot of really good strategies for people, whether it was...
You're not going to do the hot cocoa?
And the hot and chocolate breath. Okay, it was hot chocolate.
Just making sure.
See, and I remembered them, right? But I also, I'm going to suggest that we see if the high school wants to have him come and speak to the high school students. He had suggestions for kids of all ages and for adults. So it was a really good day, and I do think that the people who came got a lot out of it.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Is there any other communication? Seeing none? Oh, sorry, we
Yes.
were on instructional. Down to communication now. the MASC
Okay.
conference.
So did anyone else have anything to say about Parent University? No. Okay. I did attend the MASC-MASS joint conference, which is the Massachusetts Association of School Committees and the Massachusetts Association of School Superintendents has a joint conference every year. And I've been really fortunate to be able to attend them the last few years. And this year was no exception in terms of its value. And I'm just feel really glad I'm able to go to represent our committee and to bring back all kinds of ideas, to get reassured that so many of the things we're doing are things that other schools are doing, that other schools are thinking about doing, that we have a lot to share, but we have ideas. And I'm just going to, I have 6 pages. I had originally 12 pages. I got it down to 6 pages. I'm not going to read it all. But, just to give you a little idea of some of the things that I was able to learn about or share. The first workshop I went to was Google Data Analytics Platform. So this fellow's like, you don't need one of these big fancy softwares. If we have G Suite, we now have the tools for free to do all kinds of data analysis and also to visualize, to put it out in ways that people who aren't necessarily good at analyzing data can see it. And that it addresses the time issue, the expertise issue, the data security issue, and the fact that the assessments are always changing. We have new MCAS stuff. We have data from here. We have data from there. You can import spreadsheets, attendance spreadsheets that are impossible to make sense of, and you can import them into a relatively new Google app called Google Data Studio. And so if somebody knows, Tableau is another one that does the same. So it's all available, and I have not yet had a chance to report back to Dr. Conti, but these are the kinds of things that I'm hoping that we can look into. I see we got people scribbling here. I also was really excited. I went to a workshop called Coaching for Change. One of the issues that you'll hear me in my report, I'm very concerned in the years I've been in education, and I've worked in 7 or 8 different school districts, people are always looking for ways to hire more teachers of color, more teachers who are diverse in various ways, so that students can see themselves in their teachers. The evidence is very clear that students who see a teacher who's like them in the first 5 years of school have a statistically significant improvement in their achievement and outcomes. And the thing is that everybody's looking for teachers, and there just aren't enough teachers for the Boston Public Schools and the Burlington Public Schools and all the other school districts that are looking for this. And so the shift seems to be, and I'm really pushing that, is to build more of a diverse teacher pipeline by starting in our districts. Another piece of research shows that most teachers end up teaching within 50 miles of where they grew up. So when we've done national recruitment efforts, we're not going to get a black teacher from Chicago to come to Burlington. We can do all the recruitment we want elsewhere, but we need to build those things in Massachusetts. And I was very encouraged. I've heard throughout the course of the time I was at the conference several different initiatives that are going on, that some of which we may be able to participate in. And this one was particularly interesting. Coaching for Change is a group that started 8 years ago, and they've worked significantly in the Taunton School District, but they've also worked with other districts. And they take one lead teacher, and that lead teacher mentors 2 college students who are teacher candidates, who are teachers of color, and those teachers mentor each 2 students, high school students, who are often students with at risk or students who have come from diverse backgrounds, who then mentor middle school kids. And I think each of them it ended up with 16 in the middle school. And those middle school kids are chosen because they may be kids who are at risk, or kids who come from diverse backgrounds, and they build it. And it turns out that it may have been started as a program to help the middle school kids, but it turns out that there's a significant number of those kids who go through the program, whether it's middle school or high school or college, who end up being teachers. So it is a building the teacher pipeline for kids who wouldn't have necessarily thought about being teachers. And I found it really exciting, as did many other school districts. And I talked to the fellow about he's ready to try to expand, to build capacity. Talked with a couple other districts up this way. Maybe we could combine with Salem State. They've been working with Bridgewater State. Maybe there's some things we can look at going forward. So I was very excited about that workshop. I also went to a workshop where they talked a lot about growth mindset, which I mentioned earlier, and I know we're doing a lot of that in Burlington, and I just want to reinforce how helpful I think that is for so many kids who struggle to remember, or even kids who are like at the top of the class who are stressed out when they get a B on a test or whatever, to think of ways to be positive about your learning experience. And so that's exciting. I learned about an organization called the Mass Consortium for Innovative Educational Assessment. We do a lot of focus on MCAS. The state has started to bring in some new accountability standards that are not test scores. This organization is looking at other ways we can assess students, how we can measure other skills besides math and English, which are important, but what are the other things that we need our kids to know to be successful adults, to be successful citizens. There was a suggestion of something called Portrait of the Graduate that as a school committee maybe we want to look at, or maybe with Dr. Conti. I don't know if it could be integrated into our district improvement plan, but what's our vision of a successful graduate of the Burlington Public Schools? So some ways to think about success for all of our students. I was pleased to hear that. Our current Commissioner of Education, Jeff Riley, spoke, and he tells good stories. And he also, though, is talking about a lot of the issues that are important to us, whether it's the achievement gaps. He does say that the pendulum has swung too far regarding standardized testing, and he is looking for other ways to assess students and student growth. He agrees that the Chapter 70 formula is broken, which we've had conversations about the foundation budget. He does agree. He talked about supporting kids with their mental health issues. He doesn't like the SEL label. I mean, it doesn't matter what we call them, all of our kids need that support. He wants to collaboration between comprehensive and voc tech schools. Comprehensive schools being schools like our high school, where it's focused mostly on academics with some, well, we don't really have them anymore. We used to have shops at schools like Burlington High School. Anyway, to do more collaboration with the voc schools and help to do more global education. So he's got a lot of things going on. I'm going to try to go forward a little faster here. There was also a keynote speaker on another day, a psychologist, Dr. Mark Brackett from the Yale Child Study Center, about teaching kids how to identify their feelings, how to label their feelings, and how to regulate their feelings. Again, you know, behaviors that we see are often just feelings that kids don't know how to express. They're telling us something, and if we can help them, I think that we are working on that in a number of programs in our district, so I was pleased about that. I went to a financial literacy workshop. I didn't go to every single workshop on financial literacy because I know I've got Nicole as my my expert. But I was encouraged that a lot of the things they were talking about are the things that we've been working on. You know, we've been putting in place since Bob and Nicole came on, that we're continuing to work on. The new policies that we've put into place were mentioned, things like that. So I was glad to hear about that. There's a new state program called the Biliteracy Seal, which is a way to certify students' language learning and to recognize students who learn a second language. So yes, MCAS would be one way to measure us. English would be one of them for most of the students. Actually, I came in a little late to that workshop, but I think all students would have to master English, so it would either be their MCAS or it might be their access assessment, which is the ELL assessment as to whether students are proficient. But they would use other assessments that address reading and writing, but also speaking and listening, so that real functional language learning. And so that students could be recognized for that and encouraged to do that. When we think about the global world we live in, the focus on having students really learn another language, I think, is a really valuable thing. So that's something I may bring up going forward. I attended the Minority Caucus and Urban Division meeting, and they also are looking at teacher pipeline issues and that looking to, what's the other issue there? You know, trying to help districts where there's students who have a need that might come from low-income backgrounds and those kinds of issues. They mentioned other, like the Chelsea School District has a number of programs that are called Pathways to, and then there's, I think she has they have three groupings. So one might be Pathways to Computer Science. One is Pathways to Teaching. So I was excited to hear that that's another way where in that example, students do dual enrollment, which is what we do here, so that they can get some of their college credits without having to pay. They involve some scholarship money, and I was glad to hear about that. And the state has a program to try to get our paraprofessionals, which across the state, there's a much larger number of people of color who are paraprofessionals than are in the professional teaching staff, and finding ways to help them be able to go to college, to pay for college, even to pay for the MTELs, the teacher tests, are that can add up. So ways to provide financial support for other people to become teachers who are, I mean, the paraprofessionals I worked with in my career were just marvelous, but many of them would never have thought about becoming teachers because they couldn't imagine going to college and paying for it and all of that. So there, I finished my little report, but if people have questions, I'll be happy to answer.
Excellent. Well, you certainly made the most out of that.
Oh, and I actually, the other section is I did a lot of networking, and it was really good to hear from other school committees what issues. There are school committees that are dealing with issues that we're not, that have some big problems, and there were school committees who've got some of our problems under control. So it was a really good collegial experience.
Nice. It's always been a great experience. I miss attending,
I know
but
like
thank
to
you.
go.
Thank you. All right. Anything else under communication? We're really at that now. All right. Seeing none, we have our FY19 finance update, and so we're looking at November now. Already into a second month.
That's right. So thank you, Madam Chair. With that, we're going to have some visuals. Awesome.
So this is your financial update for this month. Basically the same format as that I presented last month, with the exception that we'll get into I did year-to-date as well as projected for both operating and accommodated. So on page 1, which is up on the screen now, the revolving fund summary, which I guess we walked through last time. I don't know if you guys want me to walk through this every time or just field questions.
I'd love to walk through it again till I get more familiar with it.
Okay, we can entertain that.
So basically the start of year balance, all receipts received through 11/16 last Friday was the cutoff that I made for this whole presentation. Expenditures to date, and then the ending balance. So school lunch, I'm going to highlight the ones that have deficit balances because those are usually the ones that everyone goes to first. So school lunch, the state reimbursement has been received for October. The total receipts include the transfer that you voted at the last meeting of $5,593.33. And then on the school choice account, you'll see that there was a transfer from that fund to fund last year's deficit that you voted. And then Sprouts Daycare, you see that number jumped a little bit from last time. There was 3 payrolls in October, and the deductions that are taken from employees to pay for the children's attendance in Sprouts are only taken on the first 2 payrolls. So when we have one that falls, when 3 payrolls fall in a month, that tends to spike a little. So, any questions on revolving or?
Mrs. Monco?
So on the few that, well, let's see, one, is it only 2 with deficits?
Yes.
Now, are those deficits apt to remain deficits, or will funding come in, like from payroll on the Sprouts and from the state on the lunches?
Mm-hmm. So these 2 are a little bit delayed, where the Sprouts, the expenditures are incurred right away for the employees that are paid, and then the deduction that's taken from the employees, the check gets processed and then deposited back into the account. So there's a little bit of a lag there. And then also with school lunch, we usually receive the reimbursements from the federal pass-through state the following month, which, as you recall, typically we address in August the prior year because of that lag time.
So historically, we have oftentimes ended up with a deficit in the cafeteria in the school lunch program, which we have dealt with other funding that we've backfilled it with. On the Sprouts, are we apt to have a deficit in that, or is that something that will catch up?
No, that's also, like I mentioned, the payroll is processed, so the expense hits right away.
Yeah, I get that,
yep.
But when you come to July and August, are you confident that that will not be a deficit?
Yes, and would adjust rates if needed, if that was going to be an issue.
Okay, so we would adjust the rates if we needed to prevent a deficit. So based on your expertise in looking at these numbers, do you see a potential deficit in anything but possibly cafeteria? At the end of the year, July, August, comparing back to last year?
No.
Okay, thank you.
Again, I just want to, the one caveat or exception I would say is if we look at sort of building and grounds or something like that, if we have some sort of systems failure that's unpredicted.
We're going to Ways and Means with
We would
that.
certainly go to Ways and Means, but we would look to have revolving help solve the problem. It would
Yeah,
depend
no.
how big the issue was at that point.
But not
that's-
deficit spend on the
Not
accounts.
deficit spending, but I'm just saying we would probably not have to spend this money first. I don't think we could leave money in a revolving account and ask Ways and
Right,
Means for
but-
all the money.
But my point is, when I look at this, not knowing enough about how the system works, the accounting of these dollars, you can probably tell where it's headed far better than I can. So do you see any of these headed in the wrong direction except possibly cafeteria, which is always an issue?
No, so I monitor these on a weekly basis, so anything that came up, I'd sort of look to right that ship
Okay,
immediately.
thanks.
Anything else? Mr. Nelson?
Just a quick question, maybe Bob could answer this, or Nicole. On building rentals, we've got some expenditures this year of about $89,000. Just highlight some of the major expenditures that we've
So,
drawn out of that account.
The major one that's probably the majority of that is the summer workers,
Okay.
which I think is 60 or 70,000.
All right, those are the kids that paint the buildings and do all the
Yep.
projects around here in the summertime. Okay, mostly payroll?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone from Ways and Means? Okay. I just have a quick question. The iPad, that's something that's not a year-long account. They buy, that's for when they buy at the end of the year of a senior year, their iPad, or is this a different account?
Which one?
The
Sorry.
iPad revolving account, sorry.
Yes.
Okay, so we shouldn't see much because it fluctuated from the last time, but now we shouldn't see much fluctuation until June? Is that, or until the seniors say whether or not they want to buy?
Yeah, I know that we just returned some iPads, so I think that we do have a check coming in.
Oh, okay.
But I might have recorded that already. Oh, yeah, the 56 there is the one that, yeah.
Oh, okay, so it's not necessarily just the students.
Yeah, so typically, there's only two things really that come into that account, and that would be is if students buy their iPads at the end of the year, or if we sell iPads back and then get a refund check for that. Then what happens is we would take that money typically if there's a balance on the lease and put money from that account towards the lease itself.
Okay, so we would see that money then come out of the revolving fund
Which is why the
eventually?
balance started off at roughly 89,000, money came out of it, 56,000 went back into it, and
Okay.
currently we're at 85.
But we've
Okay.
made our lease payment.
Excellent, okay.
Yeah.
All right, well, thank you. You know, I see this taking away some of our questions during the budget season too, as we go through this also the next couple months, so hopefully that will help as we learn. Okay, what is the next one you'd like to?
So next is the operating budget year-to-date. So the three columns is the budget, spent and encumbered as of 11/16, and total remaining budget in each of the categories. And this is the same layout as the budget presentation.
Okay.
I have a question.
Yes, Ms. Monaco?
When you say spent and encumbered, I guess encumbered is what you already know you're going to spend on something.
Encumbered is anything for which a purchase order has been issued to a vendor that we know is an outstanding bill, but we have not yet received the invoice and paid it yet.
Okay, what about when you get into a larger account like, let's say transportation for special education? Do you encumber the entire bill for the whole year at the beginning, or do you only encumber it as you make the payments?
No, we encumber for the full year.
Okay. So in some of these instances,
So yeah, if you look at page 3 for transportation, line 65, you'll see that that full amount is encumbered.
oh, all right, I get it. And as far as, it's sort of a similar question that what I asked on the other page, when you look at the remaining budget, in the operating budget year-to-date, are there any red flags? Do you see anything where we're projecting an issue?
I mean, I don't have, I haven't authorized anyone to overspend their budget, so no.
Okay, so you're watching it very carefully, and at this point in time, you don't see any risk of a deficit in the operating budget?
Well, we'll get to that. That's going to come at the end.
Oh, gee, thanks.
Oh, so there's,
What does that mean?
There's some bad. All right.
Why bother going through it? What's the bottom line?
It's a little foreshadowing.
We're almost there.
Mr. Eiler has a question.
Okay. Anyone from the, sorry. No? Okay, Mr. Eiler, sorry.
Thank you very much. Just sort of along the lines that Chris was asking. So some things appear to be encumbered. The expected expense for the entire year has been encumbered already, so I'm assuming. So like line 58, utilities, and 65, transportation. look like they're essentially 100% spent, but I assume that that's just a little bit spent and a lot of encumbrance for the rest of the year?
Yeah, so for, say, transportation, we have a contract with the bus company, and we can, it's basically up to X amount of dollars. And then we'll have, for just regular day, and then we have, late buses, and then things for field trips, so all of it's been sort of reserved.
And the same thing for utilities, presumably you know what the town is going to charge you on that, or?
For utilities, we budgeted based on the prior year, like actual bills, and then I used what Mr. Sanchez gave as a projected increase for those utilities, and then we've encumbered each of those for each of the schools.
Okay, so I'm just a little confused by when you decide to encumber things sometimes and not others. So in particular, salaries is what I'm looking at.
Mm-hmm.
But you already know presumably what salaries are going to be for a whole year. Why wouldn't you encumber those at this point?
Right now in Munis, we do not encumber salaries. It's something that I'd look to do. But then also at the end of this further along in this presentation, I did the projected, which is essentially the same thing, just a.
Okay, and I did see you had the forecast, which
Yep.
seems to cover all this, and so to some extent it's covered in the forecast. I understand. I just wanted to understand. It seems like the philosophy on when to encumber things isn't entirely consistent, but as long as it's covered in the forecast, that's okay.
Okay. All right, any other questions on the year-to-date for operating budget? All right, so next one.
So next up is year-to-date for accommodated accounts. Again, the same, the budget, the spent and encumbered, and the remaining budget.
I guess I might start then. So with regard to the tuition, this goes to the encumbered.
Mhm.
So again, it looks like you've encumbered most of it, but there is a slight 264,000. Why was the whole not encumbered amount? I guess what would transpire that 264,000 that wasn't?
So, the spent and encumbered is actual what SPED has told me for additional services for out-of-district placements, residential and day, what they expect to spend for the year. So, from obviously when we budget this to when we get to the year and start spending, there's changes in the services that students need or their placements. So that's the delta there of the additional.
Okay. So I could look at that and say, if we were to have a student's change needs more service, there would be roughly 260,000 that might work towards covering that. That is not, that 264 is not dedicated to one student or one service yet.
Right.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Other questions? I know I jumped ahead of the board.
Just a comment, and Nicole, you can just maybe help me a little bit here. The LU, the 500,000, line 75, the lab credits. The lab credits are, because we're a member of lab, we get reimbursed for non-member districts pay a 25% premium, plus we use some of our building space, so there's a formula with lab that's been around a long time that we get a reimbursement. There's been changes, though, in how collaboratives operate, where the state no longer lets collaboratives carry over credits for many years, so you have to spend your credits every 2 years. We're using all of our credits in 19. What I'd like to do sort of for 20 and moving forward is to divide it up over 2 years, so we don't spike. It's going to take us a couple years to build back into it. We had a big accommodated number in 19, so we sort of applied all of lab, but sort of for maybe 20, or we might not even have any available for 20, but we'll have to see. Let's say, as an example, we have a $100,000 lab credit going into fiscal 20. What I would like to do is only use $50,000 in 20, and then $50,000 in 20, sort of, so we smooth it out as opposed to spending it all in 1 year and then having a hole the next year. If I'm maybe not explaining that well, but every 2 years, we can't, we used to carry a balance year to year to year just in case we had kids move in, and the state rules are saying now we have to sort of eliminate that, I think, every 2 years. So that's all. I'm just saying we're going to watch, or you may see a change in sort of the lab credits as we move forward, but the idea is to apply the bylaws, or that we have to use the credits for to mitigate tuition, so it's not like we can use it for anything else, but we would try to apply it in a way that's smoother over time as opposed to a lot in 1 year and nothing in the next. So but it's going to take us, again, we're going to have to grow into that a little bit.
Any other questions, comments? All right, thank you.
The next on page 5 is the projected, which is the same as you guys received last month. And so projected salaries are current staffing and everything we expect to pay out through the end of the fiscal year. And then on lines 36 and below, which is all of the operations and maintenance expenses, non-salary, it's assumed that all of the departments would be spending what they requested for their operating. And then on page 7, the same for accommodated with the projected.
Oh, sorry. Ms. Simon or Mr. Nelson?
Ladies first.
Sorry.
So on page 5, the total school personnel budget, that's all the salaries, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. And if I'm reading it correctly, it looks like we have a little wiggle room. There's 306,000. Is that a surplus? Or is that an encumbered, uncommitted amount of money that we have a little bit of leeway?
So we're in a couple of topics.
Okay, that's what you're going to get to. Okay, all right, I'll wait.
Okay. Mr. Nelson?
Yeah, my question was similar. I guess we're going to wait for the surprise at the very end. It does look like, Nicole, you're projecting a surplus based upon the numbers that you have here and the number of staff that are here. But I think we're going to hear from Dr. Conti that there's some issues. Am I right?
Again, no issues, Mr. Nelson, but comfort level. So I wanted to talk to the school committee sort of about the comfort level in a $51 million budget in sort of, I'm going to say October, now November. Having $300,000 may seem like a lot, but it's not something I'm super comfortable with. So Nicole and I have been talking about, I guess I'd be more comfortable in sort of the 1%, sort of $500,000 range. So we talked, you've heard the term sort of a freeze on discretionary funding, and I'm not panicked yet, but the last thing I'm going to do is overexpend in 19, obviously. So I think what Nicole and I discussed is we're going to have a meeting with principals. We'll get something out tomorrow that's saying we're going to really clamp down on discretionary spending. And what I mean by that is someone like Wendy Pavlicek hasn't purchased all the food she needs for her animals for the rest of the year. Clearly, we're going to feed the animals. So when I say a freeze, I don't want people to think that, nothing occurs. But I think what we're going to really ask people who are submitting expenses, if it's something they can do without, we're going to have them do without. If this were March or April, again, I might be a little bit more comfortable, and you're going to tell me what's the science behind it. I don't have a science. I just think $300,000, if we need potentially an IA, if things change, that I think I'm not, we discussed it. We're still early in the year. I think people have what they need to get through the year. So I don't have a term that's a freeze that people are going to say, oh, we're stopping all discretionary spending. Again, that just can't happen. But I think we're going to tell principals, and I'll have to write something creative with Nicole tomorrow, that we're going to be asking them to justify strongly their expenses moving forward. And we're hoping we're looking sort of January, February timeframe, March, if we still have that $300,000, I'll feel a little bit more comfortable than I do now.
Okay. Mr. Nelson?
Just a quick follow-up, Eric. At I believe it was our last meeting, you expressed some concern about the sick leave buyback program, and I think you said there might be, we have some exposure, maybe 100,000. Is that already built into this 306, or is that a potential issue that might have to come out of the 306?
Yes, so if you look on page 6, on line 18.
Page 6?
Yes. Page 5, I'm sorry.
Okay.
Page 5, line 18. You'll see the budgeted at 45, the projected at 99,480, which has been lowered from, I think, about 20,000 from the last time. So each time that each month when any of the teachers that had enrolled to participate in the buyback are absent, I reduced that liability.
So your 306 number, Nicole, does include around $54,000 of projected shortfall in that account?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions?
So again, I was sort of asking a question without any sort of scientific justification, but I was just sort of expressing my concern. It's not panic, but my concern with the sort of where we are now in November. And I saw some nods, so again, I just want to make sure that we're going to sort of try to throttle down a little bit, but I just want to make sure I'm conveying it's not a freeze, but we're going to ask people to really justify what they're doing, and we will continue to feed the animals in the Science Center. So, and then hopefully that number will stay relatively steady over the coming months, but we're going to need some things, and I don't think they're major things, but if we're, 10,000, we just have to be pretty careful. So, Mrs. Monaco, you asked what we were cautious about. Sort of individual lines, I think, are covered. Nicole is watching those very carefully. I think where there's a negative balance, it's explained. But if I have a concern, it's sort of overall bottom line on the operating side, just making sure that we have enough so we don't overspend at the end at year's end. So that's what I'm looking at overall.
Ms. Malco.
Which leads me to the question. I was anticipating and hoping that prior to the guidelines meeting, which is coming along in a couple of weeks, that we could meet with the Ways and Means Subcommittee, and that we could also possibly meet with the president of the Teachers Union.
Yeah.
And that we could do that before we have the guidelines meeting.
Yeah, we have 2 weeks to get those planned, so.
Okay.
And even if we can't do a physical meeting, we'll try to set up a conference call or something that people can call in on and just have a conversation.
Because I know that especially one member of the Ways and Means Subcommittee is very uncomfortable with this year's budget because it was so tight. Right, Diane? And I think we should talk to them about the whole thing before we go to the guidelines meeting.
Okay.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Yes, Ms. Sickler?
Good evening, everyone. Eileen Sickler, Town Meeting Member, Precinct 4. If maybe I don't understand. So on page 5, the negotiated salary adjustments on line 12, so are you saying that that's not going to happen then, that 300?
I just haven't reallocated those back out to the salary lines, the ones that you see anticipated surplus deficits.
Okay. So it's...
Same with line 17, lane changes, column adjustments. So for instance, for line 13, the general education teachers, in line 14, the special education teachers, you'll see a little bit of an anticipated deficit in that line, but those are due to the lane changes, column adjustments, so that it offsets it.
So if I add a few of those numbers, I get to the 314?
314 or under.
Yeah, okay, all right. So there is some cushion there.
Yeah.
All right. I guess that's all I had. So I was just sort of surprised to see $300,000 cushion, but as you say, it just hasn't been pushed down to the respective line item. Okay. No, that's all I had. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Seeing no other questions?
There is
Mrs.
still
Longo?
some items on here, right?
Yep. That we're going to go over with regard to student activities, online purchasing. But right now with regard to these budgets that we have in front of us, any other questions?
Right.
Okay. Thank you. I think seeing, just for myself, seeing side by side last month, this month, it's starting to be clear, starting to understand the process better and the ebb and flow of the different accounts too, so I appreciate it. Okay. All right. Next on the agenda would be the student activities account update.
Yes, so for some of these, there's no update from the update from last month.
Okay.
So
there's no update on the student activities account.
Mhm.
Online purchasing?
Online purchasing, currently I'm working on a manual to give out to the departments that are going to be coming on.
Okay.
I've just sort of found that, showing these these departments that are coming onto the system something once and only being like hands-on for 1 or 2 days, then they don't do it for a day or two, and then
Right.
there's so many questions. So right now, sort of working on putting together some screenshots and a manual, which I think will help more departments coming on with the system.
Great. Mr. Nelson?
Want to go first?
I don't care.
I'll get a quick one. You're usually long-winded.
I'm never long-winded.
No.
I am not long-winded.
No.
A couple of meetings ago, Nicole, you mentioned that you were in the process of hiring someone to work in your department. How's that going?
We're working on it.
We had difficulty getting people to agree to terms. So we've gone through the posting, interviewing, hiring round, and so I think we're going to have to repost and look for some folks. There were some folks convinced to stay where they were, so it's been a challenging process. So we've reached out to Town Hall. We've asked the new town administrator, the current financial analyst, budget analyst, the new assistant town manager. We're asking people who know people. Nicole is going out through the MASBO listserv. So we are trying to get people to apply for the job.
Thank you.
What's the salary range, and is that the problem?
75 to 90, and no, it's comparable to other districts of similar size that have similar positions.
We looked at that, and again, so we feel like we're competitive. I just think I think there were some demands that were unreasonable and some other things, and we're honestly working as hard as we can.
Okay, so I have a couple of other questions. Do we have any action on the policy update, the ILR document?
No, and it's not for lack of concern. I think we've talked about purchasing next. We're trying to get someone hired. We just haven't had a chance to.
You have too much work and you can't get to it. Is that
get
the
that
bottom
work done.
line?
So it's, Mr. Eiler, it's not that it's not important. We're just trying to get the work done that we're getting done, and we will go through sort of purchasing. We are promise we'll get to it. We just haven't had a chance. We were hoping to have someone else on board at this time. We just don't.
On the electronic training, which departments are actually using it currently?
So right now, we have all of special education, all of IT, athletics, and business office.
So there are quite a few to go.
Mm-hmm.
And is that also getting bogged down because of the workload and not being able to hire someone?
Yeah, Nicole can only be one place at one time, so we were hoping that we could actually do the training, for instance, in the school office where all this stuff happens, and have someone still in the business office sort of keeping track of things. So we're slowing down because of that, but we're talking about bringing all the secretaries in. It's really hard to bring them in during the school day because they are pretty swamped during the day. So it's really a coverage issue, and we're trying to, people are willing to come on, honestly, and they want to learn this stuff. We're hoping the policy manual, and then maybe creating some time, finding a substitute for the school secretary, bringing them here to bring stuff.
So how are you managing the control when you're still having to use paper purchase orders for the time being? You get them, you check them in?
Yep.
Okay.
The same approval process that whether it's electronic or paper. Is funds available? Is it appropriate?
Yeah, all right, you're just having to deal with the paper documents until this happens.
Yeah, well, yeah, I guess maintaining dual systems is part of any, I guess,
it's an
change in
overload on
systems.
work. Okay, I have more, but after we get through this.
Okay. I have one comment about this topic.
Ms. Simon?
Yeah, I also was in the office speaking with Ms. Kasha the other day, and we had a staff person walk in and go, "Thank you so much for doing this electronic purchase orders." So the online purchase orders, for people who are using them, I think they're appreciating them. So thank you for setting that system up and getting it started. And I wish you could find staff to help you out, but I totally get it. So thank you.
Mm-hmm.
So, unbudgeted list of expenses. Do we have expenses that we're looking at, or does this go back to last month? We had a sheet that we voted on.
No, Mrs. Monaco wanted us to keep an actual sheet, even though we're building into the budget of things that we've added. So we're
That were
again,
not initially
that were not
budgeted.
initially budgeted. And Mrs. Monaco, I don't have that sheet for you yet, but I understand what you want, and so we are. We will have a separate sheet. Nicole has built in some of that, unless you into the budget documents you've seen. One of those was the the sick leave buyback, and you saw that that was built in, but we haven't pulled all that stuff out on a separate sheet yet, so we will have it for you.
When?
Obviously by our next meeting, definitely, but I'll try to have it in the next 2 weeks for you, prior to the guideline.
Sharon?
In this,
Put it on the-
We need to see it way before the guideline meeting.
Yes, ma'am.
That's the key there.
Yeah, we want to
in
see
this,
what we've
in the
had to
staffing
add.
section of the document that I gave you, it shows budgeted and then the actual number that we have now. So for staffing purposes, you can see those changes.
Yes, but
But I
we want a
understand
list.
you want
If-
it pulled
if
out,
it's
so
an
we will
ice
pull it
maker,
out. I'm
or
saying
if
it's
it's
sort
a
of, it is
teacher, we
accounted
want a
for, but we will
list.
pull it out, so it's easier to read.
it's like a miscellaneous list of everything that we've had to add that we didn't budget for because we didn't know to budget for it.
Yes.
And we need it for the budget because we want to make sure that something isn't left off. That's,
Mhm.
so a separate tally, that's what we need. Please.
Thank you. Sorry, Erin.
No, I
I
get
will.
it. I said we do it. We're gonna do it.
In the end, it will be best for our conversations and keep those as a rich discussion. Powers and Sullivan update, are they due next month or January?
So I'm sort of going back and forth with Mr. Powers on dates right now to
Okay.
see
Does
what
he have
aligns
it
for both of
finished?
us. I'm sorry?
Is the 2018 annual audit now finished?
No.
No.
Okay.
When was it projected to be finished?
Again, he normally would do that sort of December, January for his regular sort of town, school, annual. I think what we were, Nicole is trying to schedule time with him because part of our agreed to procedures, I want to make sure I use that right, is he's going to do sort of a mid-year,
Right.
at the end of the calendar year, sort of do a more in-depth look at our practices, and then sort of write that up. And I'm hoping then he'll even incorporate some of what he finds then into his management letter for the overall, so you probably end up, for the overall district, so you probably end up seeing it twice. You'll see, he'll look at the documents that are being sort of prepared, presented to you, the procedures, the policies, and he's going to, our agreed to procedures was he would do that at the end of the calendar year. So I think that's what you were scheduling, and
Okay, so I'm confused.
Okay.
When we talked to him here in a public meeting way back when, during the summer, it was my understanding that once town meeting passed the money that we needed to pay the bills, that he would proceed to finish the audit for 2018, and that he would come and present it to us with what Kristen referred to as a not-so-complimentary letter. In addition to that, that we had asked him as part of our consulting contract to do a mid-year look to make sure that procedures were being followed and in place. So I thought that the 2018 audit report, letter, management, whatever you call that letter, I thought that would be ready in October. So I guess I was wrong. Do we have any idea, is there any projection on when that will be, as well as when will this other mid-year? I mean, this is like month to month, and it's just not happening.
well, the 2018 audit that you're talking about
Yes.
is really scheduled with the town accountant. It's sort of the annual town audit, and I think that typically occurs, again, in December, January timeframe, that we have no control.
Is that-
We have no control over,
Okay.
over that. That's a separate process.
All right.
There will be a management letter, and there will be a a deficiency, however he decides to classify it, because we overexpend. So we know that's coming.
But that's for the whole town?
That's for the whole town. That's sort of the work that he does every year.
Okay.
Our agreed-to procedures, separate from that, we actually have 2 agreed-to procedure letters. One is on the sort of student activity, where Nicole is
The
working with
revolving.
them, in the revolving,
Right.
and that's ongoing. And then we have committed to have our revolving, or student activity accounts, again, audited externally
At the end of,
next year.
Mhm.
So that's sort of the state regulations that change, that's happening. And then the other agreed-to procedures was to help sort of look at what you're seeing now, and then he said he'd put us through a PACES, I think was the actual terms that he used. He would put Nicole, the business office, through the PACES in December, sort of a mid-year, mid-19 look to say that we're on the right track. But again, that's very separate from the 18 audit, which is sort of what he does for the town.
Okay, but is
anyway.
that mid-year, is it happening? Are you?
so that's what I've been going back and forth with Jim to arrange the dates that he's gonna come out to do the field work.
Okay, and I have one last question. I know that you, Nicole, are working with Ways and Means on, I don't know what you refer to it as, but your version of reviewing what went wrong with last year's budget. Is that going okay? Are you getting what you need? Have you gotten the information? I'd just like to know how it's working out.
Well, if I may, we had an initial list of questions, just so everyone's on the same page. We had an initial list of questions that Nicole looked at October 24, and we got an initial response from that, which was extremely helpful and answered, a fair amount of it, but, we understood it wasn't going to be everything immediately. That, of course, caused us to ask yet more questions. And we're waiting for a response on that. Now, just to understand what we would like to do is wrap this up before the May town meeting, so that, which is January, thank you, before the January town meeting, so we can put together a report by then, which means we really need to have, if we are going to hit that goal, we really need to get all these questions wrapped up in early December, so we can get a report together, come to agreement on what's in that and so on. So I guess I would say, assuming the next set of responses come relatively quickly, I think we can move along and be in good shape. If it's, and I know you got a lot to do, if it's another 2 or 3 weeks, then I think we're going to start running into trouble here, where we're not going to have that report in time, which we'd obviously like to avoid.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the plan is we're going to the Selectmen's meeting to present the scope next Monday. And Nicole has all of the information. She's working with us to get us the information that we need. And then at the next Ways and Means full subcommittee meeting, we'd actually like to be able to discuss it and present it, so that when January town meeting comes, which is the second week in January, we're going to have an actual document typed and be able to just have a presentation right then and there.
Okay.
So
And that's December 12th for that Ways and Means.
December
The fall.
12th is for the full Ways and Means Committee meeting, so we want to have everything tied up by then. And Nicole, she has the information and is working on it.
You good with that?
Yep.
Okay, thank you. All right, so I wanted to talk about it and hear where the status of where it was at, because it's important that you get the information and figure out as Ways and Means members, what you need to do and get it done, yeah. But you need her help.
Yeah, I mean, we've had multiple meetings. Nicole spent a good 3 hours with us at one of the meetings.
Well, Nicole likes you guys, so.
You speak her language.
I'm not sure about that.
We don't,
like everyone.
we don't speak the same language.
She tells me how much she likes you almost every day.
Yes, Mr. Nelson?
Just a quick question for Ways and Means as we're entering this whole guideline season. Do we have any idea what the free cash is going to be this year? Has it been certified yet? Do you know when it's going to be certified?
It won't be certified till they do the audit, right? I mean, that's, everything depends on that, this will be our 18 audit.
Okay. There haven't been any estimates, ballpark estimates thrown around?
Well, no one's included, I don't know that. That's the budget, level.
Okay. Thank you. It's a mystery.
Okay.
All right. Thank you, that's all I have.
Do you have a meeting date yet because I assume you'd want to meet as a subcommittee prior to the full meeting on December 12th? So just so you have an idea of what the time frame is.
So the subcommittee meeting hasn't been set.
Okay.
We're waiting for responses. I mean,
Okay.
Nicole unfortunately said she's going to come in on Friday and work on it. And so we're hoping first week in December at least. To
Okay.
have a subcommittee meeting to review more.
Okay, all right. That would be the 8th, okay. All right. Thank you. We greatly appreciate it, and...
You guys have questions? I just wondered if Ways and Means had any more questions on this whole thing.
Okay.
We're good, thank you.
Okay.
Thank you for putting the actuals in. I appreciate that very much.
So I just want to do a quick review. The audit is being done through the town side. There's no firm date yet on that, when we'll get that back. There'll be a mid-year, I'm thinking of it as sort of a litmus test, that we will get an update either in December. Our December meeting's early, I think. Earlier in December when? I'm sorry. It's our next meeting. 11th, okay. So when would be our first meeting in January? Because it would be nice if we had some of that prior to town meeting, 8th. Okay. Because town meeting's also early this year too, or earlier. So hopefully by the 8th, maybe Mr. Sullivan and Mr. Powers, sorry, we'll have the update of where we stand, how we're going to start building some of that trust back. Because I do personally feel at this point, seeing this, we will have some positivity from when he comes in. And then the revolving account is going to be later in the year, more spring, or are we looking at that also in the same time frame, the big accounts that he was going to look at right away with the high risk?
So I know that they've already done like a lot of field work.
Oh, great.
On those accounts, the ones that they labeled high priority.
Mhm.
But again, still going back and forth with Jim on dates, so
Yeah.
he might come out with other people and sort of
Okay.
do both at the same day. Or
Okay, all right, perfect. So that's where we stand. Any other questions on timeline frame? Okay, all right, thank you. You're a one-man show right now with some side help, but hopefully we can. Is there any accounting, Roselli, anybody that's come in that's been helpful that maybe we could pirate away? No. All right.
They all
so-
pay a lot more money.
They probably do. They probably do. But we're so fun here. All right. So I think that'll conclude the financial update unless there are any other questions or comments. No? Seeing none, we'll move on to old business. There's nothing listed. All right, seeing none, we'll go on to new business. The establish of the library revolving account, looking for approval on that. Another revolving account.
Here, I can
So
read it, but if you want to explain it, I'll save your voice. A business manager, Ms. Koch, is requesting school committee approve the creation of a library revolving account to collect funds from elementary students who purchase books at the individual school book fairs.
Okay. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second? Anyone?
Sure.
It's been moved in second. Discussion. Yes.
Why do we need a separate revolving account for that?
So proper treatment of revenues and expenses, I guess.
How much money are we talking about? Where has it gone in the past?
So these are part of the cleaning up those checking accounts.
Student activity?
Yes, so I think before that there was checking accounts held by each of the libraries, and then they'd take those funds, deposit there, and then use
Okay.
those funds. So this was sort of part of the cleaning up of student activities. And
Have you had the opportunity to close any of those small accounts yet?
the checking accounts,
Yeah.
all of them.
Oh, good, they're all done?
Yes.
So the point here is to no longer have that, the checking account issue, but to have a revolving account. Is it one account for all the schools? Or are they divided up within different?
It's one fund, but it's separated out within.
Okay, what do they use that money for?
So I guess, I don't know if everyone knows how like the book fairs work. The first one actually started today. So they'll hold the book fairs. The kids will purchase items at the book fair. And then we pay Scholastic a certain amount for whatever items that were sold. And then the balance, the library can use to purchase books and other things for the library.
And not from that same company necessarily, but just it's money to be spent on the library?
Yes, I think that Scholastic offers it maybe one of two ways. One, they can have, I think, like Scholastic bucks and use it for items at Scholastic, or they can take the actual revenue and use that, and they could use it for other companies except
Okay.
Scholastic.
Thank you.
Right. And I might be confused with other districts. This was never done through PTO. This is it's always been our libraries.
I don't know the answer to that.
All right, I just wanted to make sure it's within our realm and no outside group. Okay. Sorry,
Somebody else
Ms.
did.
Simon.
I think this is a great idea. Thank you for taking care of this piece. I know you've been busy, but it's another piece. And not necessarily on this item, but I would like to get back to, at probably a future meeting, how the resolving of the student activities accounts and the, closing of accounts and things that aren't being used anymore in particular, how we're handling that. So I know you said it's just not ready yet. So will that be coming when we do the report on the student activities account update?
So all of the checking accounts for student activities have been closed, and then the proper ones under the town treasurer have been established.
Maybe-
I think you might be confusing this with revolving.
You're right. There were revolving accounts that we're not using anymore, and so you'll be bringing that to us at some point to close things out that.
That will be
feel-
part of
Oh,
Jim
after we
Howard's
get the report.
Yes.
Okay, good, thank you.
All right, any other discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor for the establish of a library revolving account?
Aye.
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 Opposed, abstained, passes 500. The revision of a disciplinary due process policy.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Assistant Superintendent Larkin and Special Ed Director Mary Hood have submitted a revision to the disciplinary due process policy crafted by Special Education Attorney Tom Nuttall. And again, the added language is highlighted in red. It's recommended that the school committee approve the revision of policy JK, revision of the disciplinary due process. And
So
again,
moved.
Is it a first reading or?
Second.
it's a second reading.
Second.
So it's been moved in second. Discussion, Ms. Monaco?
Is this to comply with state regulations?
Yes, ma'am. Federal.
And,
sorry.
okay.
Any other-
Just want to thank
Simon?
Ms. Hood again for paying attention to these details that are very important. There have been some changes in both state and federal law regarding issues like discipline and restraints, and she's really been right on top of finding out, making sure that we're in compliance. So want to thank her.
Any other discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, abstain, passes 500. District-wide Wi-Fi.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm going to turn it over to Bob. I think Ms. Monaco had some concerns and some standards that she wanted the district to comply with, and we wanted to come back and maybe present some options. So with that.
And I'd like to interrupt before you read that. So I noticed that in the packet, it's mentioned that it's an action item. If it turns out to be an action item, we'll gladly do that. But I think we promised last time we would definitely start a conversation and see where it goes from there. With that being said, I know there's a couple different opinions on how the Wi-Fi should work and who should get onto it. I would say this is very similar to the locks on all of our doors, especially here at the high school. Let's use that for the example, right? First and foremost, we have to think about security, right? And then we have to think about accountability, right? So I want everyone to use the Wi-Fi. The thing is that I want to know who's on it, and I want to know what they're doing on it. Now, when you say the word guess, there's no accountability, which kind of means there's no security. Yes, we can block certain websites and things like that, but what happens on their end, you know, what they bring in, is their computer dirty, is there viruses, do they have inappropriate content on there, things like that. We won't know that. And then when you ask me who it is, well, I can tell you a number of a computer, but I can't tell you that it was Bob's computer, right? So those are some of the things that we've always been cautious about. So the way that we do it right now is we buy a device, and again, let's make this clear, we buy a device for every single child and every single adult in this district. So we configure that device, give it to them, and put it on the network. They use their credentials and log in with their first name, their last name, and a password that they've created, right? So that way we know that Bob Cuna logged onto this computer, did this action, right? Now, like I said, we bring in a guest computer. We try to allow it, but we try to limit it for two reasons. Like I said, not only for the security aspect of that, but we have what's called quality of service, right? When you go into, let's say, a Starbucks, for example, there's no guarantee that you're going to get the fastest speeds and your computer's going to work and you can get to every website and things like that. Because of that, we have an internal network where our teachers are on, our students are on, and we give priorities to the services and or the devices that we use. Quality of service, then, when you say guest network, we would step that down and give less quality of service on that. One of your concerns is okay, if we put it on for security or if people needed to make cell phone calls, we wouldn't guarantee the quality of service on the guest network, especially for a security measure like a phone call or a 911 call. We'd want to say that you can have the best of both worlds, but something has to give. You put them on the internal network that has the higher quality of service, now they're taking away services from the internal people. You put them on the guest network with less quality of services, then it's tough to rely on that to say it's always going to work at this high expectation level. So that's kind of the balance that we have. A couple of small facts is that yesterday we had 9,600 devices on our network in our 6 schools. 9,600. You know, we have 3,500 students, 400 employees.
400 teachers.
Oh, I'm sorry, yeah, 400 teachers, right? So.
How'd they get on?
Huh?
How'd
Well,
they get
because
on?
we have cameras, Apple TVs, we have you know, Chromebooks, we have library devices. I mean, we have so many other devices besides just what we pass, right? Teachers may have access to an iPad and a Chromebook, or an iPad and a laptop. So there's just multiple devices. Plus, we've also gone through multiple years at multiple schools where we do allow extra devices or personal devices if they've been vetted. That means a child or a teacher has brought that to us, a principal or a supervisor has approved it, we've scanned that device, and then we've put it on our network. So again, there are some exceptions to that. The high school itself, little over 2,500 devices today. So again, you know, you look at the pure numbers, less than 1,100 students, 125, 150 plus adults in the building. I mean, 2.5 times the amount of devices. Now the technical side of it. That one access point right there, this building is huge, 360,000 square feet. There's 139 of those. Sounds like a lot, but pure square footage wise, it's not. So you try to take 2,500 devices to connect to 130 access points spread around the whole entire building. That's when we talked about the density issue. So you may go into the library and there may be 3 access points, but sometimes there's 300 people in there, and sometimes there's 20 people in there. You go into the cafeteria, same thing. You go into a classroom, and again, if you want to have 30, 40, 50 devices, great. Quality of service is great, performance is great. You want to double that, 60 devices, that's when quality of service is not as reliable. And again, what suffers? Personal device with Facebook, classroom teacher, and a lesson. And that's tough. So again, we would give the preference to classroom teacher and their lesson and push that other one, the personal device, further down. So again, it's possible to do it. The quotes that I provided you right here, we've dumbed them down a little bit, so they're actually big scopes of work and big quotes. There's one for $4,800, there's one for $12,000. The difference between the two is every year we budget for either upgrades to our network and or support for that. So anytime you talk about software, you know that next year there's going to be new features and or new updates. So we kind of have that built in. We're not asking you for the money. The difference is that for $4,800, we can pay Cisco engineers to be on site for a set number of hours. That means we do some work, they do some work. At the end of the day, we think we can get it all done. For the $12,000 and change, it's a scope of work. We say, here's our list, do this. And at the end of the day, we don't pay them until that list is done complete. So again, there's a cost savings there. I mean, we have the employees in the IT side, myself as well, to jump into this and do some of this work. But that would be the difference. So the difference is that, $7,000 is one thing. It's what do you get out of it? So for this money right here, this would allow us to expand the guest network. We have a guest network right now, but it's just a password, just like what most people have at their house. So if the password today is baseball, and people either guess it, write it down, or tell their friends, tomorrow you're going to see 900 people on the guest network, and then a couple people will say, it's great, I got my phone on here, and other people will say, I can't go anywhere, my device isn't working, because they're all connected there, and there's so many other people connected to the guest network. So what we could do is we could expand it, like let's say you went to a hotel and you show up and say, I'd like to get on your network. You put in your email address or a text message. We wouldn't be storing this data, but you would put that in, you'd get a confirmation reply, basically a verification, and then that will allow you to get on. Sounds great, but how many email addresses does everybody here have? 10? 3, 5, right? So if we said only one device per email address, I myself could probably connect 15 devices because I must have 15 different email addresses, right? And again, there's no accountability. I don't know who Bubbles 13 is. I don't know who baseball player 75 is. They don't mean anything. They don't associate to anybody. They mean nothing. We just have a guest on there with a fake email address. So you do get into a little bit of, again, let's say there was a virus outbreak, inappropriate content, now even legal ramifications. If there's bullying happening, what do we do with that information? Right? We get to turn around and say, yep, we ran a report and it's this computer. I don't know where it is, don't know who owns it, but that was there and it did connect to our network. So those are my concerns. Again, that's the IT's concerns. I don't want to put words in anyone's mouth, but I think that there's a convenience concern that says we're Burlington, we have a great network, we should be able to let everybody on it. Both of those statements are true, but somewhere in the middle is where I would feel more comfortable than just opening it up. We've tried it open up before, it got out of hand. We had to meet in this room, same committee, and backed it down. Now we're obviously at that place again, let's have another conversation. So, like I said earlier, I don't know if it's really action yet. Please, let's talk. And if you have an action, then we'll go to the next step. So.
So if we say, again, I don't want to put words in Ms. Monaco's mouth, but 2 devices, we're already at 2 devices a person?
You're at 1.
Nope, so we're at 2 devices per adult, and then we're at 1 for every child, and some students have an extra device on with approval.
But if we went to 2 devices that are registered for every student, do we have the capacity to handle that? We'd have to clear a bunch of other devices?
So again, today we had 2,500 devices on the high school network. If we give everyone the double, let's assume that every teacher already has, we would add roughly 1,000 to 1,100 to that number. So we'd be at 3,600. Now, again, can we do it? On paper, the answer is yes. Logistically, it depends on the way the classroom structure works. So when, like I said, 20 kids walk into a room or 100 kids walk into the library, just because the access point is right there doesn't mean that's the one you're connecting to and you're not connecting to the one on the floor above us. I mean, your phone doesn't say connect to that one. It says, give me the closest one to me or the first one that said hi to me back. That's the way it works.
Mrs. Monaco.
So I'm not trying to figure out how the problem should be solved, okay? I think that, I thought that a year ago we had agreed that it would be 2 devices on students. Now, just as an example of how I would use 2 devices, if I want to pay my Amazon bill, the Amazon bill does not outline the charges. It gives you, you spent this much this day, okay? So what I do is I have my computer, and I'm looking at my bill, but I don't want to pay it unless I know all the charges are mine. So I take my iPad, because it's bigger than my phone, and I go to my Amazon account, and I go to my orders, and I go through, and I make sure that I identify each charge on the bill with an order. Now, I know for a fact that there are some kids in the high school that in legitimately doing their schoolwork do things like that. They have research on one device and they're typing it on another device. Okay. So it was my understanding that the kids had access for 2 devices. Couple of other points. When we started talking about iPads, Eric sort of indicated that over time, his goal was that we would be device neutral after a while, that whatever device you happen to have, as long as it handled, say, Google Docs or whatever, was needed, that people would be just using the devices that they happen to have, and maybe we wouldn't be constantly buying devices for students. But that was sort of a projection into the future. But none of this is what caused my comments at the last meeting. My comments at the last meeting were based on what I consider to be a safety issue. And if I think of the high school kids, 2 devices to me would in most cases be an iPad school issued and their cell phone. And maybe I'm just taking anxiety to too high a level, but I look at all of the problems that have happened across the country, and I think that in an emergency situation, kids should have access to their phones to make a call. I don't know how you make that work. I don't know if they log on through their phone with their email address that you have given them for their iPad. Maybe you could track their phones that way. I don't know those answers. I just know that my concern is when I have kids telling me that they can't make a phone call. Now, maybe that isn't true, and maybe they can make a phone call. But that is what I'm trying to solve. And, if you need access points and we can budget it and it's needed, that's great. But I also, it's sort of looking at it from your perspective, I don't see why anyone needs more than, even staff members. How many devices do you need on at one time? Can't you shut them off if you're not using them? If you're not using your computer, if you're in another room or somewhere? Can't you get off? I don't know. I'm not trying to solve that problem. I'm just trying to tell you my concern. And I did think that we had an understanding a year ago that it was 2 devices on the kids. And
I'm not arguing that, sorry to interrupt you. I think the recollection that I have, and we talked about it afterwards internally here, just at the high school level, was that because the high school seniors had the oldest iPad at that point, and we were switching to Chromebooks, that we would allow the juniors and the seniors to come to Mr. Sullivan and or the IT department and then request their device to get on if they had an argument that was sound, such as an older device or screen size or dead battery or something like that. So we had 200 plus kids.
But Bobby, that's an example of where we discussed something here and a different decision was made, say at the high school, and nobody told us. And I find that unacceptable. If I come out of a meeting and I believe that every student is going to have 2 devices, or, you know, pick anything, that they're all going to get 2 apples a day, if you change that, please tell us. It just, you know, I've been all this time thinking, yeah, we agreed 2 devices, and now I find out it isn't. And that, to me, is not acceptable.
Ms. Simon?
I think, I'm not sure I remember that we
yeah.
had said that all high school students would have 2 devices. What I remember is that all high school students who were in a situation where they needed 2 devices could go to IT or the principal and ask permission, which is, I think, the last thing you were describing, Bob, if that's correct? That students were going to be able to get 2 devices, but not to be guaranteed. That's my memory of it.
And,
It's not mine.
Okay.
Well, and would you say?
Yeah, so because my son was involved in that, and a number of his friends, so I was under similar understanding, the junior and senior, but then there would be another discussion later on, moving forward. So right now, at this point, we need to look forward and see what is the acceptable usage for our Wi-Fi, and what is it we expect our students and our staff to have. I know the iPad does not have the App Store anymore. That was a change between my son leaving senior year and my daughter coming in freshman year. Did that have to do with now they're not streaming Netflix and that's freeing up some Wi-Fi? Did that have to do with having more controls on what they're putting onto their devices, or a combination? And how has that affected the Wi-Fi, if at all?
Couple of questions. All right, so we have a program called Casper since we've started the iPad initiative, and what happens is that has grown again as every software has over time. So the features that were available in the beginning are light years behind the features that are available now. Again, when we first got the iPad, we had a set of rules that we rolled out. We learned some things over some time, met with different, department heads, different schools, things like that. Then what would happen is a new year would come around, new features would be available, new ways to install apps would happen. We would adopt a new set of rules. Same thing, another year's worth of experience, cycle. Then what had happened is that we had developed what's called the core set of apps, where we had made the transition to completely Google, and there were, let's say, 7 to 8 core apps, and then depending on if you were in high school or if you were in elementary or middle school, then there were additional apps that went upon that. Yes, the App Store used to be more available with some restrictions. Then over time, it said, here's our core apps, and then any other app that went on it would be a request or needed approval for it. So now with the App Store not being there, one of the features inside of Casper is called self-service. So if we turn around and say an app such as Netflix or any other educational app If we put it in the self-service, it shows up on every iPad, and then the child at that point has the option to install it or not. But it's basically a school store from the App Store that we get to pick and choose which apps are there. Again, a simple request process. It happens, we put the app in there. Again, it'd be a tougher argument for, let's say, some of the game apps. But we do have some games that are in that store as well too, because they've been requested from either department heads or, you know, math coaches or reading coaches and things like that. So yes, streaming videos and music, less of that on the network definitely saves bandwidth. So it definitely makes the network perform better for other parts of the building. But it's tough to judge because, you know, reports, presentations, emails, things like that have grown over time. So you may have 5 less people streaming a Netflix video, but 100 more people sending a 30-page document now with tons of pictures in it.
Ms. Simon?
So I have another question. Going back to the beginning of your presentation and the idea that these additional devices that you can't track. So if right now, the way it's working, where students at the high school are able to ask, or teachers are able to have a second device admitted to the Wi-Fi, that's probably the wrong term, but do you then register that device and those are identifiable and those therefore are accountable and trackable? So by asking people to register with permission, we are able to track them.
Yes.
Is that correct?
So I just want to be clear for
Okay.
everyone listening. Not trackable like GPS in
Okay,
your
yes,
car.
okay.
When you, Martha Simon, come to me and say, I would like to put this laptop on, this laptop has a unique identification called the MAC address.
Okay.
I fill out a form internally that says, Martha, this computer, model, you know, HP, blah, 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 blah. Fine. Then we allow that on the network from the network side. Now, when we get a report that there's a virus on X size HP with this MAC address, I go to my other report and say, who owns this?
Okay. Yes, good. All right. And, I mean, knowing that students can have the second device registered, I guess I don't have as much concern about the safety.
But
If
can
we go
they
back
have
to the safety?
Can every child have a second device registered? No, it's only one, right?
So there's multiple people that have the final say in that. So again, principal of the building is the first person to say yes or no to that. So even when we were doing juniors and seniors, the request was to them first and then to us. And if they had the approval, yes.
I just wanted Martha to understand that it isn't open to everyone. It's, some people get it and some people don't. And
No, exactly. So it's not a free-for-all because then there really is no request. So the request is can I get this on for what? So I can play games? No. So I can do schoolwork? Yep. I mean, I guess if there's an argument, then I would say yes or no to that.
Okay. And in terms of the safety issue, I think we're used to that automatic phone thing, but I'm not sure the reason that kids' phones don't work is because of the Wi-Fi, because I think we talked about this last time, that phones work on the signal from your carrier. And if it's in a place where the Wi-Fi is booked up, then there's lots of people around, and if it's an emergency, then there would be other people around to help in that emergency. And I, you know, we keep talking about how to have kids contain their use of devices in school and not be distracted. And I just, you know, if it's an allergy, then the teachers should know about it. Or if it's, you know, the nurses should be available. But having a second device on the Wi-Fi, I don't know if that's going to solve the anxiety over the safety of each child at every moment. And I'm just as concerned as you are about the safety of every child at every moment. But I'm not sure adding devices or whatever is the way to solve that. I mean, there are certain things that happen and we don't always, I mean, if every child if there was no Wi-Fi because of a fire and every child tried to use their phones at the same time, they might not all get on the cell phone tower either. So I feel like there's a real concern that I understand, but I feel like just having more Wi-Fi isn't necessarily the solution.
Question?
Mr. Nelson?
Bob, is there a way to improve cell phone reception within the building?
Not typically at our level. If the town would be willing to partner, let's say, with a, Verizon / AT&T, T-Mobile, and put a cell phone tower on our buildings, or closer to it, that would be one. They do make some lower grade home version ones that would then, exactly, we've tried some and we have not got the best reception. There are some cellular modules that would plug into not our access points, but some companies' access points. So it'd be the cost of the access point plus the module. But again, that's a benefit to the cell company, not to us.
Yeah, you need a cell tower. Could you stick something on the lights at the high school? Football field?
I think it's more FCC licensing and things like that to make that really happen. So yeah, it's a bigger problem than just, making a phone call and then tomorrow they're installing something on a pole.
Just thought I'd ask, thank you.
And we are in a very thick, very dimensional concrete building. So again, not that we have the worst reception, but we definitely don't have the best reception. So,
Madam Chair,
I think there was a...
given the late hour, I move that we table further discussion on this until another meeting.
Okay, it's been moved in second. Any other questions or comments? All right, we'll put
We don't need
this...
to vote on that.
On the vote?
Not yet. No. So we'll put this forth at a future meeting.
And we vote on.
Oh,
When you
to table.
Was the motion?
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstained, 500. The information you've given those is helpful. And to be honest, I didn't read through it all, so now with what you've said, it will make more sense as I read through it too. Thank you. Next on the agenda is our budget guideline meeting for, oh my God, FY 220.
Again, this was just an announcement. And again, there's no action. Town Administrator John Petrin has scheduled a meeting for Wednesday, December 6th at 8 a.m. for the annual financial guideline discussion. What? December 5th?
No, it says 6th.
It does on our board, but she's telling us that...
Thursday is the 6th.
It's Wednesday the 5th.
Wednesday the 5th, sorry. For Wednesday, December 5th at 8 a.m. And again, that would be for, I think Mr. Murphy and Mrs. Monaco would be representing the district. And before December 5th, we need to schedule some meetings or a conference call with the subcommittee and with Diana.
Sharon, could you double check for us, because Tom has it on the 5th and I have it on the 6th.
John sent a follow-up email on that.
It was...
I believe it was
So which
Wednesday.
is it, do you know?
Wednesday.
It's the 5th? Okay. I didn't get that one.
Ms. Simon?
I would like to know, is this meeting going to be posted in case someone who is not on that subcommittee would like to attend to hear the discussion, like me? I might be able to come.
It's
generally
not.
Usually
It's
posted or
generally
not? Do we prefer to leave it that way, or?
It's John Petrin's meeting.
It's
You'd
John
have to
Petrin's
ask him.
meeting.
I don't know.
Okay, all right, thank you.
All right, out-of-state travel approval?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Again, in your packet, you see Guidance Counselor Joe Adebato is requesting approval for out-of-state travel permission for guidance counselors to tour New England area colleges on the Professional Development Day on November 29th. You have the list there. Attendance at training, and again, it's just to get our guidance counselors familiar with these programs. It's recommended school committee approve out-of-state travel for the high school guidance counselors to New England states and Pennsylvania on November 29th.
So moved.
Second.
Been moved in second. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstained, passes 500. Next.
Thank you. Assistant Superintendent Larkin has submitted out-of-state travel request for teachers Katie Berkery, Deanna DeCipio, Chris Kingston, and Naomi Ellis to attend the National Social Studies Conference in Chicago, November 28th through December 2nd. And again, curriculum instruction budget will cover the expenses for this conference. It's recommended school committee approve the out-of-state travel as mentioned.
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved in second. All those in favor, any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstained, passes 500. Okay. Any other out-of-state travel not listed or new business? All right, seeing none, it's public participation, and seeing none, move right along. Do we have the need for executive session tonight?
I
Would you
think
like
we're
to-
set, and it's before Thanksgiving, so
All right.
maybe just to wish everyone a happy
Yes.
Thanksgiving, if that's okay.
Yes, most definitely. So we just again echo that, I'd like to wish everyone a happy Thanksgiving, time with their family, time with their friends, and hopefully time to relax and enjoy. So it's been a tough fall with a lot of different things in the news, but hopefully we can move forward. Peace. All right.
Does anybody know if the president pardoned the turkey?
He did.
Good.
Two of them.
Did he?
Two carrots and peas.
Oh, good names.
All
All right. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
Discussion, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And opposed, abstained, we have adjourned. Thank you.